Good to see you, Council.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Housing Authority of the City of Salem meeting for Monday, July 28th, 2025. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Tigan.
Present.
Commissioner Matthews.
Here.
Vice Chair Gwynn.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Vang. Here. Guest Counselor Bill Dixon.
Here.
Commissioner Varney.
Here.
Resident Commissioner Villegas. Absent. Chair Nishioka.
I'm here. Thank you. So, Commissioner Matthews, we get to see you live and large.
Here in a big way.
All right. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. When I serve as chair for the Salem Housing Authority, I like to explain to the members in the audience that tonight you're going to see us go through 3 meetings. So this is one meeting. We're going to be going through it. We'll adjourn it. Then there'll be the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. We'll adjourn that. And then we get to our City Council meeting. That just gives you a little information of why there's a lot of movement. Vice Chair, do you have a motion for me on additions?
I move the additions to the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Vice Chair Gwynn, seconded by Commissioner Tigan. And to your motion.
So we have an addition that is it's a revision to the agreement to become general manager of Fruitland Meadows LLC for the purpose of facilitating the development of 166 affordable housing units within the Salem community.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, will the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Tigan.
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews. Commissioner Matthews.
We can't.
He's saying aye.
He's saying aye, but we can't
Yeah,
hear
You're
him.
muted.
he's muted.
Muted? I thought I took it off.
Now we hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gwynn.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Vang.
Aye.
Commissioner Varney.
Aye.
Resident Commissioner Villegas is absent. Chair Nishioka.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. We do not have any public comment for Salem Housing Authority. And now we're on to the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair Gwynn, seconded by Commissioner Varney. Will you please speak to your motion?
The consent calendar consists of an agreement. It's again to become general manager of the Fruitland Meadows LLC, revised Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program Administration Plan, and that is 3.3B. And that is all for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, then will the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Matthews. Muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gwynn.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Vang.
Aye.
Commissioner Varney.
Aye.
Commissioner Tigan.
Aye.
Resident Commissioner Villegas is absent. Chair Nishioka.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. We don't have any public hearings. We do not have any special orders of business, and we are now to information.
The Director of Housing for Salem Housing Authority. You want me to keep, now it's back. Okay, we'll give this a try. So tonight we have just a few updates. We wanted to let you all know that we did onboard a new finance manager this month. The last one left our agency in 2022. So we have been working hard to fill those gaps over the last few years, and we are very excited to welcome Tom to the team at the Housing Authority. With his arrival, we are heavy into agency budget preparation underway, and we will bringing it to the commission in September. We are excited to continue a general partnership with Fruitland Meadows, offering 80% workforce housing at 166 units. We were previously in a partnership, and that owner had notified us that that project was going to be sold on the market rate. So saving 166 units to keep it at workforce housing is wonderful for the Salem community. We did load up the buses early Sunday morning, and the children are off to Camp Rosenbaum from our agency. This is one of our resident services that we do provide. So we do have 10 Salem Housing Authority residents that are over there at Camp Raialea, and 3 staff members that are participating in that. As well as that, this weekend we will also be hosting the Shop with a Cop Back to School, scheduled for out in South Salem over the weekend. I wanted to take note that our numbers in our family self-sufficiency program are increasing with great efforts of our team of 2. This is a 2-member team. We're back up to 146 participants this month, and 12 more attended family self-sufficiency briefing sessions, which is a really good sign. This is the program that helps individuals build an escrow account over a 5-year period. So we're excited to see the interest coming back around to the self-sufficiency program. And lastly, wanted to make sure that you were all aware that, as usual, we have 3,050 total leased units in the Section 8 program for our community, invested over $2.9 million in June in housing assistance payments to landlords and our residents. Also, for the first time, I can say we have sent out 200 good newsletters for new voucher participants offering to come on board. So exciting times for us. And that's it.
That's fantastic news. Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Tigan.
Thank you, Nicole, as always. Can you explain for us the difference between, for those 166 units, the threshold or the availability for folks in workforce housing? What does that term mean to you and your organization?
So most of our Salem Housing Authority units are at 60% area median income, and we're finding that it's harder and harder to find individuals that can pay a 60% area median income rent and still qualify for under 60% area median income levels. So this is actually giving those individuals that are just above that low income threshold a little bit extra space in achieving income, but still quite a bit under the federal poverty levels, be able to afford affordable housing. It basically would keep the rents at a less rate than the open market, which is what we were notified that they were going to sell this project as an open market rate. That would have probably drastically raised the rent for the individuals that were living in that apartment complex.
That's great. So over 60%, but something less than 100%.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, guest Commissioner Dixon.
Thank you, Nicole. I had a question. Did you say there were 200 new voucher participants coming in, now getting help for rental housing?
We certainly hope so. We sent 200 good newsletters out to individuals, so anybody who might be waiting, check your mail. But we also have 3,000 individuals waiting on our waiting list. So these are probably ones who applied for our program 3+ years ago, may actually be receiving their good newsletters in the mail right now.
So just to clarify, these are people who are on the waiting list. Is
Yes.
the waiting list still closed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Bang.
Thank you, Commissioner Nishioka. I appreciate the Housing Authority providing the monthly report. And in my review, I saw that the Salem Housing Authority vouchers for a veteran was 78% utilized. And that is, I wish that number was 100%, but 78 to me is passing. And that means that we are meeting our veterans where they're at, and I really appreciate the good work that the Salem Housing Authority is doing to meet such a important part of our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And a little bit about that, we do need to receive referrals from the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs for those vouchers, so we do encourage our partnership agencies that work with Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs to go through that program and process to refer in. But part of that, I should also make sure that everybody understands, is our voucher utilization will always look a little lower because, we're actually fully utilized in many of those programs because of the cost of each actual voucher right now is so high in this market because the rents have increased drastically. So we may be allotted a lot more in what it looks in numbers, and when we cap out in actual dollars that we're utilizing, we have to stop issuing vouchers.
Yes.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question. What's the average amount of the voucher now compared to, say, 2019, or over a reasonable period of time?
Percentage-wise, or I can tell you that the average two-bedroom probably in 2019 was anywhere from $800 to $900 to $1,200. We're now paying anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for those.
$1,500 to $2,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Wow, wonderful news. And I think, thank you for explaining how it could look like that we're not using the full vouchers, but it's because it's the dollar amount has been tapped. So that's helpful, because I look at that and I think, oh, I'm sure they're working on it, but that helps explain it.
Yeah, we're trying to find a method to, there are some notations, but we're trying to find a better method to communicate that, because we are technically pretty close to being completely 100% utilized in most of those programs.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for Monday, July 28th, 2025. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Tigan?
Present.
Board Member Nishioka?
Here.
Board Member Matthews?
Here.
Board Member Gwynn?
Here.
Board Member Brown?
Present.
Board Member Vang?
Here.
Guest Counselor Bill Dixon?
Here.
Board Member Varney?
I'm here.
Chair Julie Hoy?
Here. Board Member Nishioka, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not for this agenda.
Thank you. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? No one signed up for public comment. Councilor Nishioka, could you go on with the consent calendar, please?
Yes, I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to your motion.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of 3.1A minutes of the June 23rd, 2025 draft urban renewal agency minutes. Resolution 3.2A, which is approve the recommended appointment of David Wrightston to fill a position of a business or property owner within the West Salem urban renewal area. Action item 3.3A, which is authorize the executive director to execute an MOU between the agency and Oreo LLC to develop the agency-owned site Block 45. And 3.3B, which is approve an exception to the maximum grant amount from the RDURA grant program for a total grant awarded of $749,000 for a new mixed-use multifamily building on Willow Street Northeast, and that completes the consent calendar.
Okay, is there any discussion? Councillor Tigan.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to declare a potential conflict of interest on item 3.3B. I don't have a direct financial interest in this project, but it is within 250 feet of the property I own in Salem, our family home. I think since it's part of the consent calendar, I'll declare it and just participate in the vote, but want to just disclose that to the community in this body.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? There are no questions. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Tigan.
Aye.
Board Member Nishioka.
Aye.
Board Member Matthews. You're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gwynn.
Aye.
Board Member Brown.
Aye.
Board Member Vang.
Aye.
Guest Counselor, or just kidding, Board Member Nordyke is absent. Board Member Varney.
Aye.
Chair Julie Hoy.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. We have no public hearings, no special orders of business, no information reports. Therefore, we are adjourned. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Salem City Council for Monday, July 28th, 2025. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Tigan.
Still here.
Counselor Nishioka.
Here.
Counselor Matthews.
Here.
Counselor Gwynn.
Here.
Counselor Brown.
Present.
Counselor Vang.
Here.
Guest Counselor Bill Dixon.
Here.
Counselor Varney.
I'm here.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Here. Councillor Nishioka, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, there is. I move for 2 additions to the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Gwynn. To your motion?
Thank you. We have, as I said, 2 additions. One is a supplemental staff report regarding guidelines from the OGEC for agenda item 5.A, I think it is. And yes. And then the second one is a revision of the 2 pie charts for item number 6.B.
If I can just make a note on that, the addition sent out the wrong version. We're updating it online, and we'll try to get copies to council members before the meeting ends tonight, if possible. I apologize. That's for the pie chart regarding the item.
6B.
Thank you.
Any further? All right. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Vang.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews. You're muted.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. All right. We are on to council and city manager comment. Did anyone have anything they'd like to share this week? Councillor Vang.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple weekends ago, on July 11th, there was a fire on Lancaster, right in Northeast Salem, Ward 6, and it was a pretty significant fire. It was a 2-alarm fire at a commercial building, and I just wanted to take this time to thank our fire department and our police department for being so resilient and responding so quickly. And because of the response of our fire department and our Salem Police Department, they were able to contain the fire to just that one building and prevent it from spreading to the other buildings. And I also wanted to highlight and thank our surrounding agencies for also stepping in to help support our fire and our police, especially the Kaiser Fire Department and the Marion County Fire District 1. And I think this just goes to show that we're all here to help support a community and respond when there is an emergency. And so I just wanted to highlight that at the City Council for everybody to know that I appreciate what the
Check. There we go. Mr. Dixon, quickly. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I have a comment.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My comment is about the library and community literacy. Last month, the state reported that 75% of third graders in public schools in the Salem area can't read at grade level. And since January, the federal government has moved on multiple fronts to reduce or eliminate programs that benefit local schools and communities. I believe these developments are indicators of a major challenge for our community. When illiteracy is endemic among the children in an area, the area's future is at great risk. Those children are less likely to become full participants in our democracy, in our economy, and in their neighborhoods. The community itself loses some of its ability to attract new residents and family wage employers. When the local schools are simultaneously at imminent risk of losing tools to build literacy, that compounds the problem. Last spring, this council worked hard to secure passage of a tax levy to increase and sustain library services. I hope the council will build on its hard-won taxpayer support and take 2 steps toward a more literate future. First, work with the school board to identify ways the city can enhance the literacy building work that is a bedrock community function. Second, ensure that the library allocates a meaningful share of its new funding to student literacy. Thank you for considering these recommendations.
Thank you, Guest Councilor Dixon, and thank you for being here tonight. It's hard not to call you Member Dixon from the Budget Committee meetings, but no, your passion is real, and you bring such a wealth of wisdom to the table. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. It's an honor.
Anyone else want to share? No? Okay, then I get to give my big news.
Comment because I very much respect more information to buttress what we said.
If you would like to sign up for public comment at the end of the meeting, okay. Yeah, if it's not at the agenda, it is on the agenda. It is for the later portion of the meeting under Section 8. You're doing just fine. If you'd like to make a testimony, not right now. Thank you so much, though. Okay. Okay, I would like to talk about a bit of good news from over the weekend. I started out Friday night at North Salem High School with the CET, Children's Educational Theater Program, and their production of Beetlejuice, which was really very, very good. The caliber of talent in this town just blows my mind every time I turn around. So thank you to them. Then there was this little thing called Hoopla downtown, which brought about 5,000 participants. I think it was well over 1,000 teams, 3-on-3 basketball to downtown. I had the privilege of showing up Sunday morning. Saturday morning, I sang the national anthem. Sunday morning, I showed up to shake the hands of those in first and second place on each team. I asked Jason Unruh today how many hands he thought we shook, and he said it was well over 600. So it was a very busy weekend, and I think that event brought somewhere probably around 20,000 or 25,000 folks into Salem. So that's a real big deal. And I actually won in my division because I signed up in the mayor's division and I was the only person to show up to compete in that division. So I am the champion of that division 2025. Bigger news to me was a moment that I had last Friday at a new restaurant in town. It's a collaboration in Northeast Salem on Lancaster. And my lovely assistant, Linda Rose, does a fabulous job of preparing talking points from time to time. And she did such an amazing job of preparing talking points for that grand opening that I wanted to synopsize a bit of that for you, if I may. Gersha Eats, opening Friday, July 25th at 12:30, 2138 Lancaster Drive, Northeast. Gersha Eats and El Toro Taqueria and Seafood, two incredible culinary forces bringing together the rich traditions of Ethiopian and Mexican cuisine under the same roof right here in Salem. This collaboration is more than just a restaurant. It's a collaboration of culture, community, and connection. Food has always had the power to bring people together, to break down barriers and to tell stories. And today, we witnessed that day 2 stories of heritage, flavor, and family being written side by side under the same roof. Gersha Eats offers us the beautiful, warm, and communal experience of Ethiopian dining, where meals are shared, traditions are honored, and every bite tells a story of home. El Toro brings the vibrant, bold, and soulful flavors of Mexico, a cuisine that's deeply rooted in family and celebration. Together, these 2 cultures are creating something truly unique, something that represents what Salem is all about: diversity, unity, and supporting local dreams. This is a blessing for our city, not just for our taste buds, but for our hearts. I encourage everyone in Salem to head out to Lancaster and join in and support this incredible venture. It's truly unique. Let's continue to lift each other up and build a community where every culture is celebrated and welcomed at the table. And that is all I have for this evening. Anyone else? Okay, we are moving on then to, we have no proclamations, though I kind of made 3 of them, I guess. No presentations. And we have public comment. Okay, I will call 2 names at a time, so one person can be ready while the other one speaks. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. I apologize. 3 minutes to speak. The yellow light will flash when you have a minute left, and red will come on when your time is up. I'm hoping everyone will be faithful to that and honor those kinds of boundaries. I'd like to call James Hutches and Brent DeHart. And when you come forward to the microphone, please state your name, your ward, or your address for the record.
Well, good evening, Mayor, councilors, and staff. My name is James Hutches, and I work in Ward 2 at the Salem Airport. I am also a board member of the Fly Fit Salem Foundation, and I have many years of experience in airline and airport management, over several decades as a pilot as well. But the reason I'm here to talk to you today is about air service in Salem. I was intimately involved in air service when it was here in 2008. I helped set up the station when Delta was in here. And I can tell you, a lot of people are saying, hey, Delta didn't work out here, right? We actually overbooked every single flight. Those flights were full. And so I want to dispel a little bit of negativity and talk to you about the benefits that air service has brought to Salem here. First off, Avelo obviously is not going to be here in just a couple months here, but they've brought some really great things to the airport here. Avelo jump-started our commercial air service after a long time of not having it in here. And they came in when there was no airline operating here. They took a chance on Salem, and it worked out really well. Those flights were full. We have a lot of infrastructure at the airport that has been upgraded because of having that air service here. So our terminal's been modernized to meet TSA standards. We even had 2 TSA equipment upgrades in the last 18 months, upgraded IT systems, flight monitors, Wi-Fi, PA systems, advertising displays. That terminal looks really great and is modernized. We also expanded our local workforce there at the airport. That airport is really buzzing right now, okay? That's a really good thing. We have TSA hiring local residents, aviation trained police and fire, and more other staff to be able to serve this 750-acre airport. Our airport is also now able to be able to handle airliners, charters, because we have new ground support equipment there that is able to take on even aircraft that have to divert to Salem because of an emergency, and that happens quite often. We have millions of new federal funding that's coming in from the FAA and also congressional earmarks. The important part here is that Avelo came in and gave us the data we needed. We knew that it was going to be successful here, and now the data proves it. Okay, those flights were full. It was very popular. I can't go anywhere without somebody asking me about when's the next airline coming. When is it? I loved it. I went to Vegas. I went to Burbank. They loved it. Okay, so this airport is poised for growth. This airport needs your support. We will have another carrier that will come out here, and we have the data to prove that air service is viable here in Salem, and it will do well when we have our new carrier here. So I look forward to having your support for that.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I'd like to call Brent DeHart and Janelle McLaughlin. And again, please state your name and your ward or your address for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brent DeHart. I do business in Ward 2. So as you receive the information report tonight and looking towards a work session, I wanted to point out some of the return on investment, like James was talking about, that Avelo service has brought us. That's return on investment, and to state that the loss of service also was not what had to do with Avelo and nothing to do with Salem. We did what we were supposed to do, and like Delta in 2008, Salem proved itself a viable market and suffered a loss due to circumstances that were outside our control. All right, so the money, the city, as you all know, used your urban renewal funds to upgrade and modernize the terminal at a cost of over $1.5 million. But because of that, basically, the allowance the airport gets from the FAA increased to the tune of over a couple of years. We will get $2.3 million more from the FAA over a 2-year period because we had commercial air service. That's a pretty remarkable return on your investment. So, and if we can secure another carrier or 2 or 3, this would happen every year. That's an additional $1 million of federal money that comes into the Mid-Valley and helps with our infrastructure at the airport. So in addition, due to commercial service and the efforts of Congresswoman Salinas, Congress allocated $850,000 towards additional terminal improvements. So that's over $3 million of federal funds just because we got this kick-started. In addition, using the state of Oregon visitor spending figures, 18 months of flights has resulted in $32 million in new area spending. So that is over $1.6 million a month of visitors spending right here in our local area because of Avelo service. So, correspondingly, the city has experienced a large increase in TOT funds and TOT collections, so more tax revenues coming in. So the investment that we put into the airport and into getting commercial air service is paying huge dividends, despite what some who are less informed might say. The money does come back, which is great. So lastly, I want to say time's of the essence when it comes to a new carrier. Breeze Airlines has already picked up 4 of the 11 Avelo Burbank routes, including 2 in Oregon. All of these airports had incentive funds at the ready, and we believe that that's why they were announced so quickly, and their service will be resuming in March under Breeze. We will need incentive funds to get service back. Airlines are now scheduling their routes for spring and summer of next year. So, to be on someone's schedule for the first half of 2026, we'll have to be able to communicate that we have an incentive fund probably within the month, would be our guess. This is urgent. What we don't want to see happen is for TSA to take their equipment out of the airport and have to fight to get it back later. And we don't want to lose good employees who have raised our security standards. So we'll be looking to have an airline letter of intent to show TSA so that there's a plan and a commitment for service to return.
Thank you, Mr. DeHart. Your time has expired.
That's so fast.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up is Janelle McLaughlin and Lieutenant Robert Powell.
Hi, I'm Janelle McLaughlin, and I work in Ward 2 and have been working along with my coworkers at the Avelo ticket counter. So I wanted to present a different perspective. You've heard from Brent, you've heard from James, but what you haven't heard is from the people that are actually using this service. And so as for the passengers, we have seen a ton of what we might assume are maybe lower than average income levels. We saw young families, large numbers of grandparents, and as predicted by former counselor Jose Gonzalez, we saw a lot of Hispanic families that use the service traveling back and forth to Burbank. And a lot of their kids, and a lot of these kids, this was their first time ever being on an airplane, and those were my absolute favorite. They're just so excited. Anyhow, we kept Spanish language information and regulatory materials in case there was a language barrier. We always had something there that could help us out. We disembarked and boarded so many handicapped people. It's a whole group of people that I just haven't seen using the Salem Airport at all, and it was wonderful to see that happen. We've served these transportation needs and families. Serving these transportation needs and families are a good thing for this community and for our citizens, and they're going to be missed. They're really, every flight that I've worked, people have come up and said, we're so sorry, we're going to miss you guys. This was so important to our family. We have gone through watching people come up from Burbank and visiting family here. We have so many repeat clients that come up back and forth that are going through some major things. We just went through it. One of our clients experienced the death of their family up here, and we were able to walk alongside of them with that, which seems kind of weird to be doing that at a terminal, but it happens. There's a lot of cool things that are happening there. So when you're thinking about stuff in the future, think about those 400 to 500 families that are using the service, and those flights are booked, you guys. I'm picking up a lot of luggage. I just want you to know that. I'm getting big biceps. Anyway, the terminal is ready and willing, and so are the staff out there. We loved working with the public, and we would like to continue to do so. So please keep that in mind.
Thank you for your testimony. Lieutenant Robert Powell and Dave White.
Thank you for the honor of being able to testify this evening. My name is Lieutenant Robert Powell, and I am a 50-year correlative analyst for the military retired, which in my arena was environmental. And I am suggesting directly that you pause on your $8 million possible expense, because I can provide you documents that will prove that the issue is incorrect. The deep drawdowns is not necessary, never has been necessary. And I will explain that the regular drawdowns have been done every year. The difference is that they're attempting two things. One is to remove hydropower from all of the dams in the Willamette Basin, and that is impossible because solar and wind will never replace it. The Willamette Basin is a microcosm for the Columbia River Basin. The Columbia River Basin boundaries in a 1995 meeting in Montana were concluded that their first intent was to remove all but indigenous people from the Columbia River Basin boundaries. I've given you 3 documents, the beige one, the colored one, and the history from 1840 on, so that you can understand the travel that we've gone through as a country. I was born in Oregon. My grandparents owned the Deepwood House. My great-grandparents built the Willamette Law School and were the first 2 deans. And I'm passionate about the fact that we have to handle this in a common sense manner. I am for the tribes and I am for the fish, but only when they will do the full research. And they will not do it right now because of the narrative. I've been on the water since 1965. I was drafted after Kennedy was assassinated because I was an analyst at that time. Our agency didn't understand why it happened. And so I've been on the water for most of my life. And the fact is, the sea lion is so far out of balance with the salmon cannot survive this. And so I'm just simply saying you need to pause it and get more research, because you only have the narrative the Corps wants you to have. And I don't denigrate your staff, because they're doing what they're being requested to do, is figure out how to fix something that does not need to waste $8 million. Now, for my 1 minute, if you want to really fix Oregon education, as a forensic analyst who has
Excuse me, okay.
2 children and 9 grandchildren, what you have to do is get rid of sustainable development for education. After you read it, and that second document I gave you with all the color in it is the document which will tell you why your schools are failing. And it's unfortunate, because I graduated from South Salem, and we deserve better than's happening to us. And thank you all,
Lieutenant,
for
thank you
allowing
for
me
your
to speak.
testimony. Dave White and Christina Ballard.
Hi, my name is Dave White. I live in Portland. I'm from salmonprotectiondevice.com. And I'll make a statement. There's no legal or scientific reason to do these drawdowns or to remove any dam, because fish ladders work. And the problem is what they did was based on junk science published by Oregon State University in a predatory journal, and these woke environmentalists sued the Corps of Engineers using Department of Justice own attorneys, which is 18 U.S. Code Chapter 11, conflict of interest. And that's illegal, what they did. And so our lawsuit is about that. And this guy will testify. He was an operator of the Foster Reservoir and Green Peter Dam. And here's one of the things he said. The first topic is sockeye salmon. Every sockeye that was in the fish ladder was summarily killed and disposed of. The reason given was no diseases from sockeye getting transmitted to the Chinook salmon. That's interesting, considering these fish have shared the Willamette River for thousands of years. So there's no legal or scientific reason to do what they're doing, because what they're doing is wrong. And on the way back, my sister and I went up there and talked to the operator of the dam, and they said nobody there wanted it taken out. Every house in Lynn County had chocolate-colored water coming out of their faucets, and the Willamette River ran chocolate-colored for about a week. Some of you may have seen it. I saw it myself. And also, we have I know of federal law, and that's a violation of the Clean Water Act and Environmental Species Act, because they killed fish by doing that. And the proper thing to do is to dredge behind the dam and fix the fish ladder. So this lawsuit will be $450 million against them for what they're doing. It'll be $320 million is what it takes to dredge behind all these dams, which is the proper solution. For example, the Klamath River, those dams, the silt has 40 to 200 times arsenic in it. And that's on the side of the river and in all their estuaries downstream. It's terrible what they did down there, and it was illegal. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Christina Ballard and John Lyons.
Hi, Mayor, Council, and fellow citizens. I want to talk about the Oregon Government Ethics Commission guidance that you had received, and I understand that the supplemental report that came out today seemed to clear up a lot of the issues that you were worried about. But I still want to talk about it because I don't think that folks were really thinking about the advice that you originally received. Anybody who tells you you cannot speak to your constituents is not telling you something that is in your best interest, okay? From all the things I've read about this and the things that I understand about public meetings and Robert's Rules of Order and all the ethics issues, this was a matter of quorum, okay? That was the big question here, and it was obvious to everybody but you, who were advised by two people, and I don't know what the motivations there were. The least benevolent that advice could possibly be is a knee-jerk reaction to the ongoing, the ethics investigation surrounding the serial communication regarding the former city manager's resignation. And at its worst, this advice was an attempt to deny constituents access to their elected representatives when the constituents are scared. The constituents are scared about the budget here. We're scared about what will happen when ICE comes to Salem. Businesses are scared about their profits. They're scared about the parking issue. We're all scared about rising crime, and we're scared about the implications of more law enforcement on the streets and the implications it has for marginalized populations. The executive director, Susan Myers, executive director of the Ethics Commission, said that the guidance you were given was a misunderstanding of the law. They never issued guidance that prevented you from engaging with the community. Communicating with your constituents is what you are here to do. It's why you were elected. And the ethics concerns there should have been some more critical thinking before you went down the line of believing you weren't allowed to speak to your constituents, because that's why you are here. You were voted in by people who trusted you enough to put you here, to speak for them, to think and to work on these things. And I really think you need to think about the advice you were originally given, because anybody who tells an elected representative that they cannot speak to their constituent, to me, that means there is an ulterior motive. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. John Lyons and Ashley Carson.
John Lyons, Ward 3. Thank you for bringing up the reading and students. I read in the schools, so I understand the situation. And maybe I'm out of line now because being a member of the Morningside Neighborhood Association and getting the notice that my counselor, Shane, was not going to be able to attend the meetings. We don't have police there now because of overtime. I'm not sure about the fire department. We've had representation in the past. But if I don't have a counselor there, then the interaction between neighborhood associations and the city of Salem, there is none. So if the intent was to do away with the neighborhood, well, you upset a lot of people. So, and maybe I'm out of line because I don't know what the new ruling is, but being Irish Norwegian, here I am. So that's it for that. Thank you on the reading.
Thank you for your testimony. Ashley Carson.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Carson, the Executive Director for the Center for Hope and Safety. We're located in Ward 1. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment this evening. The Center for Hope and Safety has provided support to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Marion and Polk counties for over 50 years. We greatly appreciate the recommendation for approval this evening of item 3.3C, the 2025-2029 HUD Consolidated Plan and the 2025 Annual Action Plan. The Center for Hope and Safety is very thankful for continued funding for our case management services for survivors of domestic violence. This support is needed now more than ever, with reductions in other areas of our budget. We're facing a large shortfall in funding at the conclusion of the current state fiscal year and are concerned about maintaining current service levels in our community. We also appreciate the recommendation to fund our much-needed roof repair. The Advocacy Office, built in 1967, has a leaking roof that has caused damage to the building. A new roof funded through CDBG ensures that we can continue to safely serve thousands of survivors and their children every day in our main office location. Lastly, we're grateful for the recommendation to fund repairs to our main parking lot, which continuously floods, as well as perform electrical system updates and other needed improvements to that main advocacy office. In 2024, the Center for Hope and Safety had 38,000 contacts to our programs and provided over 10,000 nights of shelter, as well as 11,300 in-person advocacy services for people across this region. The support of the City of Salem through this CDBG funding is critical to our organization and the victims and survivors that we serve every day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Now we have one person online, Angie Villery.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you for letting me join you remotely today while I'm in Park City, Utah for the One West Tourism Alliance Leadership Summit. I'm Angie Villery, President and CEO of Travel Salem, and I'm here to comment on Agenda Item 6C regarding commercial air service. While we are disheartened by the news of Avelo's abrupt departure on August 10th, we are thankful for them believing in our market and bringing service back after having no commercial air service for 15 years. There is no denying the economic value of Salem's commercial air service. In the first 18 months of service from October to March, we benefited from $32 million in visitor spending right here in our community, with visitors flying in on Avelo from Burbank and Las Vegas and spending on average $1.8 million every month, supporting local tourism businesses such as hotels, restaurants, and attractions. Impressive to say the least. Our tourism engine is thriving beyond all projections, with 7 out of 11 months of TOT collections last fiscal year coming in at the highest on record, driving TOT collections to record-setting levels. We know commercial air service is contributing to that success. So what's next? We are hard at work recruiting another carrier, and we have identified several, with one that has immediate potential and could deliver top routes that our community flies to, such as Phoenix and San Francisco, for example. Based on recent circumstances, we wanted to have some assurances that our community would continue to support commercial air service. We sent out a survey to neighborhood associations, all 18, business owners, and other stakeholders, and received a statistically significant response that provides clarity on community sentiment. More than 600 folks completed the survey, and 85% said they support a new carrier. They also support the destinations that a new carrier would offer and value the local amenities that Salem-Willamette Valley Airport provides. Some respondents noted concerns about deportation flights and Salem General Fund expenditures for airport operations. I'd like to share that the carrier we're in negotiations with does not do deportation flights. I want to encourage City Council to consider investments in a minimum revenue guarantee that is necessary for us to secure a new carrier. Travel Salem is working hard to secure a portion of the funds that will be needed, but it's going to take all of us contributing to these incentives to land that next airline. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you again for your time this evening.
Thank you for your testimony. Did you have a question, Councillor Gwynn?
Angie, are you still there?
Of course I am. Hi, Counselor.
Hi. So my question relates to the MRG, and do you know what it would take approximately?
We have a general sense, yes. We believe it's about $1 million for one route, and it's probably up to about $3 million for 2 more routes and significant routes. So we're looking at about $1 million to $3 million. It depends. We want more assurances from the carrier that we're talking to. We want to know exactly, essentially, what we would be paying for and creating these incentives for. So there is more dialogue that needs to occur, but what's positive about the whole thing is that the carrier is willing to sort of phase in the funding over 3 years. So we wouldn't have to come up with all of the funding up front. Obviously, in the first year, it would need to be weighted a little heavier because they're starting service and so forth, and so there might be some more insurance that they need essentially during that first year, excuse me. But we would be able to phase in that funding, so that's wonderful, and that would provide us time to deliver on that promise. But I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you again for your testimony. If there is nothing further, that completes public testimony. We are moving. That's fine.
My name is Sandra, and I reside in Ward 5. I'm just here to comment on the Avelo contract and the airport that operates out of Salem. And I want to give a perspective that is missing in this session, one that is connected to the issue that people have brought up with Avelo Airlines. So I've heard a lot about the economic impact about the airline being discontinued in Salem, but I want to remind everybody that undocumented people in Oregon provide about $700 million in taxes. Those are the same taxes that we are using to fund projects like the Salem Airport. So in considering your next steps with the Salem Airport, consider that Salem's population right now, 23% is made up of people that identify as Latino. Many of us are immigrants. So when considering what airline you're working with, and if the airline continues to be part of, or we continue to provide commercial flights out of Salem, consider the 23% of the population that will be impacted by this decision. And I would suggest that if there are investments we could make, that we make them into public services like the public library, our schools, and other services that are essential and that are being underfunded by the federal government. Our funding and our taxes need to be prioritized to support the communities most impacted by these issues. So don't forget about the 23% of the population in Salem whose labor contributes more to the economy than the airline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. That concludes public comment. We are moving on to the consent calendar. Councillor Nishioka.
Thank you. I move to approve the consent calendar with item 3.2A pulled to 5.B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councillor Teigen. Councillor, to your motion.
Yes, thank you. So as I said, the consent calendar consists of minutes from the July 14th City Council meeting, the draft minutes, and the July 21st, 2025 draft City Council work session minutes. It is also item 3.3A, adopt revisions to Council Policy X-4 regarding connections to water sewer services for properties that are located outside of city limits and outside of the Salem-Keizer urban growth boundary. 3.3B, Approve new job classification and compensation for fire inspector 1 and assistant police chief effective July 28th, 2025. 3.3C, approve the 2025-20-2029 Consolidated Plan, the 2025 Annual Action Plan, and analysis of impediments to the fair housing for submission to U.S. HUD. And that ends the consent calendar.
Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Counselor Tigan?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Aye.
Counselor Vang?
Aye.
Counselor Nordyke is absent. Mayor Julie Hoy?
Aye. All right, moving on. We have no public hearings. We are on to special orders of business.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. I'm going to open up the discussion with just a little summary of where we're at and then turn it over to council for discussion. As everyone is aware, the OGEC has been providing advice and guidance to members of council and to public officials statewide regarding prohibited serial meetings, and we've included quotes from a couple pieces of advice that have been provided to members of council concerning that. That has led to some confusion and some hesitancy, not just in Salem, but statewide regarding communicating with third parties and communicating with each other regarding pending business. I think generally OGEC has been tried to be conservative and tried to say that, you know, you can talk to members of the public, you can talk to members of the media, you can talk to each other to some extent, but you have to be careful because if those communications get spread to a quorum of council, then there's a potential for a serial meeting violation. And I agree with that sentiment, but you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and you have to be reasonable in how you apply it. The conflicting advice that we've been receiving kind of led us to ask councilors to take a pause on meeting with neighborhood associations, giving the potential that a member of the neighborhood association could act as an intermediary and convey an opinion that one councilor might have made to other members of council, that leading to a quorum of council deliberating outside of a public meeting, which would be a potential serial meeting violation. Thankfully, OGEC late this last week provided frequently asked questions page, which clarified a number of these issues. I think there's still some ambiguity out there, but as far as councilors meeting with neighborhood associations and as far as multiple members of council attending a neighborhood association, so long as that's less than a quorum, which for the city council is 5, the FAQ was relatively clear that that's just fine. You can go to those meetings and express your opinions regarding city business. Other councilors can attend that meeting and express their opinions as well. And the OGEC's FAQ did not have that same caution that other OGEC guidance has about members of the neighborhood association acting as intermediaries. What they did say is that you should not ask or direct these private parties or third parties to act as intermediaries. So when you're speaking to members of neighborhood associations or any member of the public for that matter, don't ask them or direct them to say, hey, go find out what this other counselor thinks about this issue, or don't convey my opinion to that other counselor. There's a few easy pieces of advice that they gave. So I'll just kind of go down some of the clarifications in that FAQ. Basically, they say that members of governing bodies may meet and discuss pending governing body business with both the media and third parties, such as neighborhood associations and residents. The FAQ did not place any restrictions or express any concerns with members of council or any governing body communicating with the media and expressing your opinion on city business. They said governing bodies cannot meet in a quorum in private to discuss pending city business. That's kind of the easy one there. We all know that. They said less than a quorum can meet with third parties and members may express their opinions on the issues. Members should not attempt to use third parties as intermediaries, as we discussed. The FAQ was less clear on communications directly between governing body members outside of a public meeting. The FAQ posed the question, when do communications among governing body members become prohibited communications? The answer says it depends, which is a good attorney answer. We all like that one. It's very helpful. I'm being facetious. The full quote is, it depends on whether the communication involved a quorum, the subject, and the purpose of the communications. The FAQ provided 3 factors in the form of questions. So it asked, do the serial communications involve a quorum? And as you understand from serial meetings, 2 counselors can speak together, and then one of those counselors talks to 3 other counselors, and all of a sudden you've got a quorum. That's the essence of a serial communication. The second question is the subject of the communication within the governing body's jurisdiction. Now, the city deals with a lot of different issues. Just about any substantive issue is going to be within your jurisdiction, whether it's on the agenda tonight, next week, or potentially a year from now. So if it's something that council could potentially make a decision on, it's within your jurisdiction. Now, what's not within your jurisdiction are informational items, procedures, things like that. Those are non-city business items that a quorum of council can talk about in private. The last question that they asked, which kind of raises concerns with me, is did a quorum use the serial communication for the purpose of deliberating or deciding the matter? When they refer to the purpose, it almost sounds like, do you have the intent to deliberate? Well, the law doesn't talk about intent, it just talks about deliberating. So that to me kind of raises a question of what exactly that means. They didn't provide any analysis of these questions, they just stated the questions. On this third factor, like I said, it's a bit more ambiguous. State law defines what deliberation means, and somewhat unhelpfully it describes it as discussion or communication that is part of the decision-making process. So that's the law that OGEC has to interpret. It's very broad. It could mean pretty much anything, right? Well, OGEC took the effort to try to define that in their rules, and they did define what decision-making process means. And they define it to mean the process a governing body engages in to make a decision, and then they provided different examples. Identifying or selecting the nature of the decision to be made, gathering information related to the decision, identifying and assessing alternatives, weighing information, and making a decision. So based on that, you kind of have to think it through a bit, but based on this definition, most communications between council members concerning the substance of a matter will constitute deliberation. So you're sharing information about what the issue is. That's information gathering. That's the deliberative process. You're providing your opinion on what you think about the issue. That is information that people are going to weigh in making the decision. That's part of the deliberative process. Now, council members, such as the council president, can reach out to members of council and say, hey, the meeting's at 6 o'clock tonight. These are the agenda items. If you have questions regarding what's on the agenda, you can reach out to staff and we can get those answers to you. That sort of communication is informational in nature. It's perfectly fine. So the FAQ appears to permit less than a quorum of the governing body to meet and communicate and even deliberate on a matter within the body's jurisdiction. However, to the extent those communications get expanded to a quorum, and that can happen without your consent, without your knowledge even. So if 3 members meet, 1 member then goes and talks to 2 other members, then you've got a total of 5 sharing that information that you're discussing. There's still a good likelihood that a serial meeting violation would occur. So you can do it, you can meet in less than a quorum to have these discussions, but you have to be careful about those communications getting shared with other members of council. So this FAQ is largely consistent with the advice that we have given over the years. It's consistent with the LOC and other local government's advice concerning serial meetings. And it does clarify prior advice from OGEC that was more broad. This includes prior advice that governing body members, even less than a quorum, should not discuss with each other the substance of matters within the body's jurisdiction outside of a public hearing. So I think this is a good start. I have a meeting tomorrow with the LOC and with other local government members to discuss it. I think there needs to be further clarification on what you can and can't do. Can you meet with other members of council and discuss items that are on the agenda? I think it's relatively clear from this FAQ that you can, but that's really inconsistent with what they've said in a number of forms to each of you, probably at different points in the past. So I'd like further clarity from OGEC on that. I appreciate what OGEC does. They've worked hard to try to provide conservative guidance. I think they could be more clear in a number of issues, and I think this is a good first start on that. With that, I'll be happy to answer questions, and I turn it over to council for discussion.
Anyone have any questions or discussion? Yes, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Atchison, thank you very much for all the work that you've done on this. I know that I reached out to to OGEC and scheduled a meeting, and I met with the executive director, and I had very specific questions that I asked her, and basically was explaining to her that we as a council, each of us are struggling with these uncertainties that they seem to have given us. This was before the most recent guidelines were shared. And I appreciated her time and her assistance with all of that, which I did share with our city manager and attorney, so that they could help understand what we're all, looking at. And I know that I'm really pleased that we are now able to go back to our neighborhood associations, and that we can do that when the other counselors that we often share the neighborhood associations with. That gives me a lot of solace, because that is a really significant and important aspect of what we're doing in this position. So I believe you'll see all of us, or most of us, in August and from there on. So I'm really pleased about that. I do feel that we as a council group have all been feeling very uncertain, feeling so encumbered by not being able to, it's like almost I can't even say hi to my fellow counselors because of fear that this is going to be, a communication that might be derived as something outside of what we should be doing. So I am looking forward to more clarifications, and as Ms. Myers said in my meeting with her, is that currently this is a living document, meaning that things are always in the flux. That gave me some solace and some fear. So hopefully we'll have improved direction, and we'll be able to understand how we can work more effectively as a group. Thank you.
Yes, Member Dixon. I did it. Guest Councilor Dixon.
Thank you,
Sorry
Mayor.
about that.
I still have, even seeing the revised Ethics Commission guidance, it still strikes me as unacceptably vague and overly restrictive of counselors' First Amendment rights and legal obligations to represent their constituents. I wonder if the Constitution of our country ever would have been written if these rules had been in place. I mean, the restrictions on counselors being able to talk to each other and talk to their constituents are inimical to representative democracy. I do have two questions. One, it's bothered me since the beginning why neighborhood associations of all the independent organizations in the community that counselors meet with have been singled out in this process all along. They are independent organizations under the city code. That's how they're designated. So why neighborhood associations? Why not provide broad guidance about all of the organizations that counselors meet with? And then the second question, since all board and commission members fall within the city's guidance, will the city communicate whatever guidance it has going forward to all of those members as well as the city council? My understanding from the ethics training that we did in the winter and from the written material that I've received in the last couple of weeks, is that all members of boards and commissions, as well as the members of this group, are covered by that guidance. So I would like an answer to those questions.
No, I think the guidance was specifically directed concerning neighborhood associations because, you know, multiple counselors oftentimes meet with the association, and the potential for a serial meeting violation there is greater. On the second question, yes, you're correct. Every advisory board with the city and the URA and the SHA is a governing body, and they're all subject to the same rules. We've been hoping to get clarification on some of these issues before we provided guidance to them. I think this helps, and I think we'll be providing that soon. There's still going to be some ambiguity, as you've seen.
Councillor Tigan.
Yeah, thank you. And guess Councillor Dixon, to your question too, I think that there have been other instances in the last month or two in which other groups of folks, like folks in the downtown, wanted to bring multiple counselors together to hear from us in that scenario. And just like a neighborhood association, we opted not to go to that meeting for the same reason. But I think the city attorney's point is well taken. We generally think of our engagement obligations to the neighborhood associations as a primary focus, which is, again, why I'm really glad to have this direction from OGEC. I think there's a couple things from my perspective as a counselor that are really important for the community to understand, is that this isn't just an evolving document. This document counters things that we heard from OGEC in the last few months. I received direct advice that if I was to communicate with a member of the press ahead of one of our meetings, it could be sort of headed down the slippery slope towards using a member of the press as an intermediary, and thus creating a quorum and violating public meetings law just by talking to a news reporter. Like you, that struck me as, yeah, that didn't seem right on so many levels. And I won't say what it is about the Constitution or something like that, but it certainly scratches that itch. So for them to say in this FAQ that under no circumstance can communicating with the press be considered a violation of public meetings law, that's a 180 from what we heard within the last month. So that's important to say. I also think this question of intent gets to us being able to have real honest conversations with our constituents. It's part of the democratic process for a member of the community to want to come and talk to me, to want to come and talk to Councilor Nishioka, to want to come and talk to Councilor Gwynn, and so on and so forth. What we were given the impression is that participating in that kind of conversation could lead to something like a quorum being established. As the city attorney said, they say really directly in this document that the line is that if a member of the governing body asks or directs that constituent to be the go-between among the governing body members, now you've sort of skirted down that slippery slope. Otherwise, I feel from this I can participate in those conversations, and the constituent can do their lobbying, if you will, by going and talking to more people. That really, like, the idea that that a constituent could take the things that we said and go and create a quorum with our understanding definitely put a chill on my email account. It put a chill on my calendar, and it put a chill on my heading to meetings like a neighborhood association. I think the other thing that's really important for people in the audience, and I'm sorry I'm not facing you as I talk, to know is that OGEC doesn't just give advice to us about whether we've obeyed the law. They also determine whether we've obeyed the law. So they're the ones who will decide if we violate these rules, and they're the ones who will decide. They'll go back in our file, and if they've had to write us a letter of education, then they'll decide if they want to fine us $1,000. for violating these laws. So it's very chilling. The city isn't going to pay that $1,000. The final thing, and I'm sorry, I'll stop after this, but it has to do with the respect among this group here on stage, is that these violations aren't violations of the individual. So Councilor Tigan doesn't violate the public meeting law. The body violates the public meeting law. And so if I decided, you know what, these are a violation of the Constitution, I'm just going to go do my merry thing and go create a bunch of quorums because I think this law doesn't make any sense to me. I don't just put my pocketbook at risk. I put the pocketbooks of every member of the city council at risk. And I think that's another thing that we've seen that is like, well, okay, that is another level of making sure that we can work cooperatively together as a body means that we also have to respect that element of this law too. So that was a lot unscripted, but those are my thoughts on it, and I'm looking forward to the day where we can put this behind us, continue to engage with our constituents. I don't like doing this volunteer work flying blind, and the direction I get is from our constituents and not just from whatever's bouncing around in my head. So I look forward to being back out there soon.
Thank you, Councilor Tigan. Anyone else? Yes, Interim City Manager Nunbury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Guest Councilor Dixon, if I got that right. So I just wanted to go back and clarify the question about why neighborhood associations. So I just want to give the series of stuff that happened. By the way, I had the opportunity to attend some of the neighborhood association meetings. I could hear how much they were waiting for you guys to come back and talk to them, and also I know each of you I have talked to and how much you were missing that. So I was the one person that got to listen to both sides, so I'm really glad that you get to reinstate that and start attending these meetings in August. So with the why neighborhood association meetings, and it wasn't OGE's intention to target neighborhood association meetings, that's not how it happened. So we, after each of you have gone through the training, of course there were questions about which meetings can you attend and which meetings you should not be attending, and what is and what are the implications of that. So as we were trying to kind of figure it out, each of you have sent some questions to OGEC, and they responded with some guidelines or advice to each of you. One of the questions was very specific to OGEC. How about neighborhood association meetings? I think one of you sent that question saying, can we attend neighborhood association meetings? That's kind of what triggered them responding to that question, saying, yes, one counselor can attend, but if more than one counselors attend, these are some of the guidelines around it. And that happens to be like that day at 11 a.m., we had 2 neighborhood association meetings scheduled that night, and we were trying to figure out what is the right thing to do. There was a lot of ambiguity, and it was very ambiguous for me, and as we were kind of trying to interpret. And that's the one week the city attorney took a vacation, and then I was working with the acting city attorney, and it was, for me, it was ambiguous. For the legal office, it was ambiguous, and it was my decision at that point to say, okay, not knowing what is okay and what is not okay, and there wasn't enough time to coordinate one counselor at a time because they can't talk to each other. So we were trying to figure out how to kind of even coordinate this, and we wanted a more sustainable model rather than doing this one-off. So my advice to the council was, let's take a pause until we get some clarity on some of those guidelines. And we immediately sent an email to OGEC asking for that clarity, and we haven't received it until Friday, last Friday. So that's kind of what made it for us to pause on this, because it was so ambiguous that I did not feel comfortable to put each of them at risk and collectively putting this entire governing body at risk. So I'm glad that there is some clarity on it, but it was a very specific question from one of the counselor to OGEC to say, how about neighborhood association meetings? And that's what triggered for them to say, no, wait a minute, these are all the things that you cannot do, right? Like, so hopefully that answers the question about like what really happened behind the scenes.
No, I appreciate that. I still have serious questions about the Ethics Commission's approach on this.
Councillor Brown. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brown raised his hand first.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Oh.
Nope, go ahead.
Rock, paper, scissors. Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm going to follow Councillor Tigan because he said it perfectly and very nice, and I'm not going to be as nice. Because I am seriously frustrated with the fact that they did a 180. They did a 180 on us. And I want the public to know that that 180 that they did on us, it put us in a place of paralysis. And that is unfair to us as elected officials. A. B tells me this. We are still under the resignation of the former city manager. That is still hanging over our heads. So my question, rhetorical as it may be, why should I trust what they're going to say for that decision when they did a 180 on this? So that's my concern, rhetorical as it is, but I'm still going to say it. And then right behind that, I do want to applaud President Nishioka for this, and also for the city manager, and also for the city attorney, just being in the fray, trying to iron all of this out. So thank you for doing that. But the frustration is still there. And Councilor Tigan said it best. If they would fine us, we would have to pay that out of our pocket. There's no way around that. And so it's still troublesome that we have this commission that is appointed and they make their decisions based upon their own interpretation. And so when they decide to come back again in the next few months, we are supposed to trust their decision. That to me is concerning, which tells me this: we will have to recapitulate the same conversation again this fall. I yield the floor, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Varney, did you want to go, or did you want to play rock, paper, scissors for the next? Just
No.
kidding. Go right ahead.
I'll go ahead. I'll just make it really, really quick. I'm not going to repeat a lot of things my colleagues have said. I feel the same way. I appreciate the clarity, but there's still this cloud of uncertainty that hangs over everything that we do. And that's really, really challenging. It impacts our communications with constituents, et cetera. But one thing I really wanted to say is how much I really appreciate diligent and dedicated staff, our city manager, everyone for stepping in and answering emails, filling the council president role, doing so much of the communication that needed to be done while we were trying to get some clarity. It took hours and hours and hours of their time. And I just wanted to say thank you. Because of them, they were still communicating with a lot of people where we couldn't, and communicating with us. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Vang.
Thank you, Mayor. As the most recent elected city councilor to sit in this chair, to get mismatching information from the Ethics Commission has been deeply frustrated. And it affects my ability to be responsive to my constituents who have placed their trust in me to elect me as their representative on the stage. And so when the decision was to pause attending neighborhood associations, that not only frustrated and disappointed me, but also created uncertainty with my constituents. And how are they supposed to voice their concerns to the city and to the government? And as a city councilor, I take my role as the conduit of the people I represent and my role in the city. And so while I appreciate the clarity that the commission has provided so very late, it still raises a lot of concerns about how I interact with my fellow counselors, how I interact with the media, how I voice my opinions and try to be transparent. Because as a younger person, I am on social media more often than I would like to admit. And that is where I express my opinions, that is where I share my likes, my dislikes, and to potentially have that come back and affect what I do on this board and on this council and have that affect my other council members is unfair, and it makes being a governing body more difficult. And so while I appreciate the somewhat clarity from the commission, there is still a lot of question and ambiguity that needs to be done. So thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Vang. Councillor Matthews, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm for the most part, really, I'm just doubling down on what everyone else has already said. But I did also want to make it kind of clear, I think this, similar to what Councillor Varney said, city staff and the city attorney, they have done such a good job and such a great job during this time of just making sure that we were informed, but also trying to keep the neighborhood associations and the public informed. I think they've come under some criticism, just from constituents and media and other platforms, and unjustly so, in my opinion, just because they came to the same conclusion that I think we all did from various communications. And to Councilor Brown's point in Tigan's, this is a full 180 from communication and from advice I had received previously from the OGEC. And so I just completely commend the staff and the city attorney for what they did here, because they were doing everything they could to keep us protected while still trying to meet the need as best they could. So.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Tigan.
Thank you. I'll just maybe preempt a question that folks are having by hearing us talk about this, is that just don't forget the city of Salem is a political subdivision of the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon writes the rules for how we can operate, and those rules are passed into law by your state legislators. And so if you're asking yourself, how could this get fixed? It can't really get fixed on this stage. It can only get fixed here in Salem, but not by this governing body. And so I would talk to your legislators and your state senators if this feels frustrating to you, and if it feels like this iteration of public meetings law is keeping you from communicating with your elected officials. They need to hear that. And I think it's really important to remember that even though we have to follow these public meeting laws, the state legislature does not. So these aren't rules that they hold themselves to while they're doing their business. It's just rules they put upon us and boards and commissions, county commissions, budget committees across the state. We're the ones who follow the public meeting laws, and for the most part, the state legislature does not have to do that as they operate. So just want people to know that.
Thank you, Councillor Tigan. Anyone else? Well, I would like to share that, and again, I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said, but I would like to say that we've had the wonderful opportunity to go first in this process out of every other city in the state. And I think that's by no accident. I think we are the group that could handle it. And not just the councilors, but also the city staff that's comprised at this time. And we're doing it. And I couldn't be more proud or, humbled by the opportunity to work with each of you in this environment that is difficult. But again, it's happening. So thank you for your commitment and your willingness to protect what we have going here. And I'm looking forward to the progress that we'll make and further interpretations of the law. Anyone else have anything to share on that topic? Okay, then we will move on to item 5B, which was pulled.
Thank you. So the motion is to adopt a resolution number 2025-18 declaring an emergency related to the Detroit Reservoir deep drawdown.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Counselor, to your motion.
Yes, this was something that had been on our consent calendar, but it really needed to not be on the consent calendar. And so we now get to have a presentation and the ability to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Alan Dannon. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I serve as the City Engineer in the Public Works Department. My job tonight is to give you some background and provide justification for the declaration of an emergency to prepare for the deep drawdown at Detroit Reservoir that's proposed to begin in the late part of 2026. I think most people think about an emergency declaration like this as a response to an event like an ice storm or a flood or a pandemic, but the Salem Revised Code does also address threatened emergency conditions, and that's really what we're here to talk about tonight, is conditions that are coming for us that we need to get ready for. The city began investigating as soon as we heard about the proposed drawdown back at the end of 2024, and so I want to spend a few minutes kind of sharing with you, one, a refresher on our city system and how it works, a little bit of what we know about how the drawdown will work, the investigation that we've done, and the findings that we learned from that, and then the measures that we're proposing to take to address what we've learned, and a little bit about the schedule and budget for the work before we wrap up. So, as a reminder, I think most folks know, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, the city's drinking water source is the North Santiam River, which stems from the Mount Jefferson region in the Cascade Mountains. The river passes through Detroit Dam and Big Cliff Dam, which are operated by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. It makes its way from there to the City of Salem treatment plant at Guerin Island, which is located just outside of Staten. The treatment plant operates with a combination of treatment technologies, slow sand filters, an ozone facility that we built to respond to the cyanotoxins that started to be discovered in the watershed 5 or 6 years ago, and then finally chlorination to maintain water quality as water gets transmitted to Franzen Reservoir for storage, and then on to our customers here in the city of Salem and nearby agencies. I wanted to talk a little bit about slow sand filters and how they work. I brought a prop. So slow sand filters are essentially a large pond, but they're much more technical than that. So they're built from coarse graded material to fine graded material over a large footprint. Our filters are around 2.5 acres for the most part. So it's coarse gravel at the bottom, working its way up to finer material, and then a 3-foot sand layer on top. I would pass this around, but it's actually pretty heavy, so you can come check it out after the meeting if you're more interested. Hopefully it doesn't fall on my toe. It operates just like you would think as a filter, physically removing material from the source water, but it also provides the opportunity for a biological layer to develop, and that biological layer essentially eats constituents in the source water that we don't want in our finished water. So that's essentially how it works, a very simple process. Over time, this sand layer will get plugged with material, and the flow rate through it decreases over time. And so when that flow rate reaches a sort of a critical level, we're not pushing enough water through the filter. Our operations staff drains the filter, they scrape off the layer of fine material on top, and then they can put it back into service. That typically happens every several months. At the start of the filter's life, there's 3 feet of sand. And when that sand level gets depleted to about half that depth, then the filter needs to be resanded. We need to fill it back up to that 3-foot level. Like I said, this is a tried and true technology. It's been around for like 100 years. It's effective and low cost. But one of the limitations or specifics about this treatment type, it relies on low turbidity source water. And I just want to take a minute to talk about what turbidity is. I know it's been talked about and folks probably know, but just to make sure. Turbidity is essentially a measure of particles that are suspended in the water. And it's measured with something called, in a unit called nephelometric turbidity units, NTUs for short. That's essentially a measure of how light penetrates the water. So the higher the number, the more cloudy or hazy the water is with suspended particles. The lower the number, the less. For this type of treatment, we typically would like the sort of ceiling for everyday operation is around 10 NTUs. That's very clear. Those of you that have been up to the North Santiam, especially this time of year, know that it's a very clear water source, and we see numbers well below that most of the time on the North Santiam. So I want to take a minute to talk about the deep drawdown. So the drawdown is part of a biological opinion that was introduced by the National Marine Fisheries Service to the Army Corps of Engineers, and scheduled to begin at the end of 2026. Essentially, the point of it is to lower the lake levels to a level that allowed juvenile salmon and steelhead fish to pass out of the dam through the regulating outlets. So that's below where the water goes through the turbines to make power, and give them better survivability as they try to make their way downstream. What that means is the lake is going to be drawn down to around 50 feet below where it normally is at its minimum wintertime pool. That's never happened since the dam's been constructed. This has been done in other parts of the Willamette Valley system. It's been talked about. The picture on the slide here shows in 2023, the South Santiam, where the most recent drawdown was done on Green Peter Reservoir. And they saw peak turbidity values of well over 200 and sustained values of over 100. Remember, 10 is kind of our ceiling. You can kind of see what that looked like at the confluence of the two branches of the Santiam there. There is some hope that the North Santiam drawdown will be different. Every river is different. The figure on the left I know is a little bit hard to see, but what it shows is there's a big difference between the wintertime pool elevation on the South Santiam and the wintertime and its drawdown elevation compared to the North Santiam in Detroit, where there's a much smaller difference between the minimum pool and the drawdown elevation. So less exposed sediment is predicted. So that gives us some hope. We don't know exactly what it will be until it happens. I think it's likely to assume that we will see values over 10 NTUs, and it will be for an extended period of time. I also want to mention, really here tonight to talk about preparation and how to get ready. I know Director Martin is planning to come back to council with an item to talk more sort of about the drawdown itself, how we participate in the supplemental environmental impact statement process that's going on with it right now, and sort of our long-term approach to the issue. So I wanted to let you know that. Okay, on to the investigation we did. So as I mentioned, working with our engineering consultant partners, Carollo Engineering, who are experts in water treatment technology and engineering, we created essentially a model of our treatment plant and used sediment that we sampled from Detroit Reservoir to try to understand how this turbid discharge would affect our filters. So we had 6 different pilot filter columns. We ran different levels of turbidity, different sort of sediment characteristics, and multiple filter runs where we ran it through till failure, scraped it off, and ran it again. So able to model a lot of different conditions and get a much better understanding of of what we might expect. And I think that's important to note, that we aren't just going off what happened in other branches of the river or elsewhere in the system. We did our very best to really understand exactly what we're going to see specifically at our plant. So what we found, not surprisingly, there was an impact to our filters. Like I mentioned, we ran a number of different turbidity levels from 50 up to around 200, including some pilot or some benchmarks at sort of normal river levels. And what we found at 50 and above was severely reduced filter runtime, so a lot of sediment building up quickly on the top of the filter. Like I mentioned before, several months is our normal time to scrape the filter. This was 2 to 3 weeks, and worse at higher levels. And we also found that we needed to scrape more material off in order to get everything out so that we could begin operation again. Perhaps even more concerning, and the picture on the right kind of shows it, is even with that, over time, over several runs, the fine-grained material was penetrating deeper into the filter than just the surface. And so even when the filter was scraped and it was a quote-unquote clean bed, we were seeing less flow able to go through it even when it was clean. And so what that could potentially mean is we have to scrape a lot of material if we're doing repeated turbid discharge through our filters, to the point where maybe it would even have to be rebuilt after one season of this, just depending on how much and how often we have to do it. So, kind of an obvious finding, but really we want to avoid that turbid discharge into our filters to the greatest extent possible. I think the study also, though, gave us some insight on, if we have to do it, how we might manage it and some of the measures we would take to mitigate as best we can. Okay, so if we want to try to avoid putting dirty water into our filters, what are our alternatives? This kind of summarizes where we are. So average wintertime demand around November, December, when the drawdown is planned, is around 25 million gallons per day. Forgive me, I might start to say an MGD as I go through this. We have alternate supply sources beyond just the surface intake from the river. We have existing wells at Guerin Island that we can draw from. We have an aquifer storage and recovery facility in South Salem where we pump finished water below ground from our system for storage, and then we can pull it out for use when we need it. And we also have an emergency intertie with the city of Kaiser that both cities can use for depending on each other if they have a shortage. The good news about the proposed timing of the drawdown is it's at a time of year where City of Kaiser can actually has surplus water that they can provide us, and so we're grateful to them for their partnership. All that said, the max capacity that we can produce is somewhere in the 21 to 23 million gallon range, so we're a little bit short of the average demand. It's not uncommon for us to have turbidity events due to storms in the watershed where we have to stop withdrawing water for a day or 2 or 3 days. And in those cases, we rely on storage in the system, so the Franzen Reservoir that I mentioned and other reservoirs through the system, and those can be drafted down until the river clears up enough that we can start producing water again and fill them back up. However, we can't do that for an extended period of time because really what that storage is there for beyond demand for our customers is firefighting. And we don't want to threaten the volumes that we need for firefighting that could occur anywhere in our system. So you can imagine extended period of time where we can't meet demand, we start to get in a difficult decision situation where we were having to decide between putting turbid water through our filters, drawing down storage, and how to balance those kind of tough trade-offs. So we need to take some actions immediately. And really that is to expand our alternate supply sources and build as much resiliency into the system as we can. There's 3 key pieces to that. One is and probably the most important, is to drill some additional wells at Guerin Island. We are planning to sink 2 more large production wells and have an option to add 2 more to that, so up to 4 if the yields give us the volumes that we need. In addition, we have a second connection point with the city of Kaiser. There's no pumps there right now, so it would make sense to add pumps to give us that second place, that second place where we can trade water with them. It will boost the capacity that we can send back and forth, and also give us some redundancy if we have a failure at one of the 2 locations. And then finally, we have a program that's starting this year in the CIP to resand some of our filters at roughly $1 million a year, and then going up from there. We have some filters that are getting towards that point where they need to be replenished. We want to accelerate that effort and get them full of sand in advance of this, so that if we do have to use them in conditions where it's not optimal, we have built some resiliency into those filter beds. All right, so I just want to close by kind of sharing the schedule and how that justifies the emergency declaration, and then I'll talk a little bit about the budget. So I think most folks know that the vast majority of the cities and public projects throughout the state get delivered according to the requirements of Oregon statutes, that you design a project, you put together a set of contract documents, you put that out to public bid for anybody to bid on, any contractors to bid on, typically for a period of 4 weeks. You open those bids, you award the contract, and you go out and build it. In this case, we have some complexities with the work that I just outlined, where there's only a handful of well drilling contractors that do wells of this size and this production level. They typically have a large backlog of work, so even once they're under contract, it could be weeks or months before they're available to come do the work. Similarly, we're hearing that the pumps and some of the drives and associated equipment that we would be looking at for these wells, lead time on those could be up to 30 weeks. That's half a year. So we really need to kind of get those timelines moving right away. If we did it all according to the standard process that I just outlined, we'd be looking at March 2027 at the earliest, and that's months after the drawdown is proposed. So what we're proposing to do is take an expedited process where we work with our engineers and scientists and a general contractor to prepare, scope the site, scope the work, finish the design, and do things out there physically to get ready while we do some expedited procurement with our people that we don't have contracts for things like drilling, pumps and equipment, that kind of thing. I want to be sure to point out that we don't just throw out the rules for those procurements. City purchasing rules have requirements for emergency procurements that requires us to get competitive quotes from as many contractors as we can. In the example of the drillers, we'll go to the 4 that we know of that do work in this region and get quotes from all of them. So we'll do competition, to the greatest extent that we can, but with an expedited schedule. I also want to point out that the contracts that we have with some of the partners that are outlined in the staff report, like our consultants and our general contractor, those were competitively procured. They're consultant of record or contractor of record contracts. They competed against other firms based either on qualifications for the consultants or on price for the general contractor of record. Lastly, on the budget, we have estimated around $8 million to do this work. That includes, beyond what's in the staff report, some staff time and other procurements that we wouldn't need to take the expedited process for. In the budget right now, we have $7 million for water supply mitigation and just over $1 million, like $1,054,000 for filter resanding. So we're not asking for any additional budget authority at this time. We'll work under that authorization that's in the existing budget. Last thing I want to say is I know Director Martin committed to it in a prior email. We will bring quarterly reports back on all this progress, procurement, and budget as we progress towards the drawdown. So, recommendation is to adopt the resolution 2025-18, declare the emergency and authorize the expedited procurement I just outlined. I will tell you that upon approval, I've got drilling specifications ready to go, and they'll get sent out tomorrow. So that's the urgency level that we're dealing with. And I've got Public Works staff behind me, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Did anyone have questions? Yes, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you. I have several questions, but first off, I'd like to understand the cost of resanding. And I know that that's something that as it goes down, we'll need to do. But I understand it's also a concern because of the sediment. So I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit more information on cost of resanding.
Sure. So as is lined out in the CIP, we have about $1 million in this coming year. That was meant to be preparation, and then the first sanding would be the next fiscal year. And I think the numbers go up to around $1.5 million over time. So that's about what you'd expect, somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million for an 18-inch resanding. If we have to do more than that, the numbers get bigger, right? I mean, hopefully you'd have some economies of scale if you need to replace all 36 inches, but it's, you're up at the $2 to $3 million range if that's the case we run into.
So is that for all of the sand filters, or is that for each one?
One at a time, yes.
One at a time. All right. And I know that we're hoping that this will take place in a certain block of time, but I'm hoping that we also are prepared in case it takes longer and that we have to continue utilizing the water that we're going to save or store.
Correct. Yeah. The measures that we talked about here are really to get ready for year one. If it goes on for long periods of time, then there's more that we may need to do to adapt to the situation. And I think that'll be part of the discussion when we bring back sort of the larger topic in the next few meetings.
And one more. Not hearing anything about education on conservation of water. I know that in the past, when Oregon has had problems of need for water, that there was huge campaigns to 5-minute shower with a friend, don't flush your toilets. There were all kinds of things. So I'm wondering if
we're going to go there.
I'm wondering if there's any thoughts or any plans to campaign for ahead of time for conservation and making people really aware of their water use.
Yeah, I think that's part of our message now, but it could definitely be amplified in advance of this, and certainly would be part of the strategies for especially long-term dealing with this issue. One thing that's working against us is the time of year, right? So the easiest things to curtail are things like irrigation and washing your car, and there's less of that going on in the wintertime. But there's still certainly things you can do, like you mentioned. I think some of those things came from outside the engineering department. But
Thank you. Councilor Matthews, I see your hand.
Yeah, I had two questions. One, so when kind of looking at the plan, obviously there's multiple different layers to it. And one of those pieces is adding a pump to the Kaiser, their system, essentially. How many gallons do we expect that to actually give us? Because I know right now it sounds like we're between 21 and 23 million from your report, is that I took away. If we were to add those pumps, would that get us over our $2 million gap?
yeah, it's about 1.5, so it would get us very close. But
okay.
I think building as much redundancy into our plan as we can, so that if pumps fail, wells fail, whatever, we have a little extra capacity is still a worthwhile investment.
I agree from like a long-term perspective. I guess just the suspension of our procurement rules, is it necessary for us to suspend it for all of the parts of this project, or possibly just the parts of this project that get us to our level that we're needed? And also maybe there is a benefit to suspending all of them from a cost analysis perspective. Like maybe by suspending them all now, it's cheaper to do the whole thing. It's just You tell me.
I think in a perfect world, over time, the trade-offs are we can do this quicker, get things happening faster, so the money goes out. The time value of money works in our favor, but in a longer period of time with more bids, more competition, in some cases, then that could reduce the cost. I think if I had to pick one thing that we would focus on, it would be the wells, just because that's where the biggest return on investment shows up. That's where we can get the most volume, and I think that will build us the best sort of buffer in the shortest amount of time.
How much of the $8 million are the wells?
Roughly between 6 and 6.5. So it's the biggest chunk.
So they're heavily the bulk.
Yeah.
And then kind of lastly, obviously, I think two other constituents kind of talked about this tonight, but with the federal landscape kind of changing every day, it seems like, and obviously it's less, maybe less environmentally friendly as it has been in the past. Does that change our narrative in any way? Does that change what we're dealing with or potentially our future with this drawdown?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Martin, Public Works Director. While things are changing, there really is no certainty with it. And one thing that we know for certain is the demand of our water users in Salem. And I wanted to go back to your prior question. When we did a test run of the first Kaiser intertie, we were able to get about 4.3 million gallons of water a day, but the chlorination system broke, and we had to shut it off after, I think, 36 hours. And so those are the kind of things that can happen if you rely on just trying to barely meet that minimum. There is absolutely no backup. So had that happened when we actually were in the event, we would have been an extra 4.3 million gallons short. So that's why it's important to try and get all of these in place, because even with the wells, if we can get 1.5 million gallons per well out of it, that margin is still really, really narrow. And if any one of those things goes, it could really be catastrophic for us. So that's why we're proposing all of these at this point in time. It's really doing whatever we can do to protect the system.
And I'm sorry for the last question, Mayor. I'd asked for permission for it, but I can't see on the screen. But so with the kind of the overall process, you mentioned that the competitive market piece will still be there because you'll be reaching out to each vendor and contractor to determine kind of what their cost would be. Is that in all aspects of the project, everything from consulting to well drilling to analysis or engineering, kind of all, I don't know what's involved, but all the different parts of it, we'd be reaching out to competitive market in each aspect?
Not for each element. So the contractor of record, which we actually already went through a competitive process for, even though it was generic, it was not specific to this, we'd look at using that contractor of record out there. So they would use subcontractors, so then they could reach out to different subcontractors to help them perform the work. They also are a contractor that's worked out there, in fact, through the cyanotoxin event, so they're very familiar with the facility and understand and know how to really accomplish what we're trying to do and do so in a safe way. One thing that can happen at a water treatment plant is if someone makes a mistake and spills some diesel fluid into the sand filter or has something go wrong, it contaminates all that water, and in a second, we don't have safe drinking water. And so knowing that they're using the right equipment, they actually have to use vegetable grade oils in their equipment, so if anything were to go, it's not petroleum based. There's a lot of things that go with working at a water treatment plant that are really specific and very critical. On the consultant side, the contractor, or the consultant of record that has actually done the pilot study so far is the same engineering firm that actually did the cyanotoxin response with our ozone treatment facility and also worked on a sand filter. So they're intimately, the knowledge out there is really hard to beat, and so we're proposing just to keep that contract with them going. They also were selected through an RFP process to begin with and are on our list, so it's not like we just chose them because they were there. I think the water resources work, they are a COR. They also have people that have done a lot of testing at Garen Island. So before we before we built our collector well, we had a lot of testing that was done out there and monitoring the test results, monitoring the different wells that we have to try and figure out where the best places are to drill additional groundwater wells. So that staff is intimate with Garen Island. So there's a few of those that we have in place that wouldn't be competitive. You could say we already went through a competitive process to get them on the list. But then the ones that our city engineer referred to when it comes to well drilling and getting pumps and procuring equipment, those are ones where we haven't done anything with that yet, and we would go get those quotes and be as competitive as we possibly could.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, did you have something?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr. Director, thank you for just that clarification. You know, I have great respect for you and your staff, especially after we did that tour several months ago. We learned quite a bit. And you just mentioned, I guess, my little area of hesitancy. When I think about the mistakes that could possibly happen, and I'm going to go directly to the money. Right now, you said we're at $8 million, if I'm not correct. Is that $8 million?
That's the estimate right now.
Right.
Yes.
And remember, like last year, you shared with us, I think it was around about the holiday season, to where we had a water main break. And I think, you know, you explained, was it sewer?
It was a sewer.
Sewer.
Yes.
And I think you shared with us, you know, just about the aging pipes underneath our ceiling, the clay and all that. I know we can't anticipate mistakes, but if something were to happen at the treatment facility or during this process, will we have enough in our reserves to take care of those financial mistakes if they were to happen?
So with the work that is planned, drilling the wells at the island, resanding, I would not envision that to be highly critical where mistakes would occur, that something would happen, we'd have to shut down and we'd have to make a pivot to some other option. That doesn't underestimate that when you're working in a water treatment plant, you got to be careful. So with the money that's being proposed or for these projects, I just think it's critical. And even if you look past and said, what if at some point in time they don't do the deep drawdown, or they stop doing the deep drawdown and do something different? There are other vulnerabilities out there. And so one of the things is, as councilors have toured the island, we go up to the easterly tip and look at the dam, and we talk about the dam, and at some point in time that's going to need to be replaced. We talk about the different flow splits, what flow gets over to our intake. A big winter storm could come and it could significantly alter that flow split, and all of a sudden water getting to our intake is limited. That's something that could happen. Having these additional groundwater wells would actually help us in a situation like that too. So this is not just hey, it's just here for the deep drawdown. It's necessary for it, but it also provides resiliency in case any of these other types of things could happen.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Madam Mayor.
Yes, Guest Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, and piggybacking on Councilor Brown's comments, does your scenario planning for this include a need for mandatory conservation measures?
Not yet. And I say not yet because we still don't know actually what amount of water we can get out of those wells. So we have a ways to go to see what we can get, depending on how successful they are. Maybe the conservation measures may not be necessary. If we are not able to get what we hope to get, we would actually have to look at conservation. There would be some education, as Councilor Nishioka spoke about. We're just not there yet to know. I mean, this has happened really quickly. We're trying to get as much information as we can, and we're still going through the process. But that could happen at some point.
And I appreciate that. Just one quick follow-up. If mandatory conservation were necessary, would that be a separate emergency resolution?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Gwynn.
Thanks. So my question, well, first of all, it sounded like, based on the information provided, that this is all about the deep drawdown, but now, based on what you've just said, it sounds like there's really more to it, and this is sort of a contingency plan. But so my question was, what, if anything, is being done to stop the Corps from doing the drawdown?
Yeah, if I could go back to your first statement, it is a declaration for an emergency now because of the deep drawdown. Like we know that it's pending. The Corps has said it's coming. We saw what happened to the city of Lebanon and the city of Sweet Home. They have that ability to get there. Now, could we oppose it? Could we fight it? I think those will be discussions that'll be upcoming. But anytime you enter into something like that, there's no certainty. And so if we hold off on doing anything with the hope that, hey, we're going to beat this and stop it, and it doesn't happen, we just lost all the time from actually trying to get ourselves prepared. But we plan to come back to council with more information on our test results and actually look at the big picture of what does this mean long term if this is going to happen for an extended period of time. And it looks extremely challenging. And so we want to talk about those things and get council's input on how we proceed going forward with the Corps.
So is that something we get our lobbyists involved with? Do we go to the state? Do we go to our senator?
It could be all of the above, yes.
Councillor Tigan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Martin, I just want to pick your memory a little bit. After the Beachy Creek fire and the Labor Day fires of 2020, did we see a change in the character of the water? You know, the map shows all of our water comes from the Mount Jefferson area and that watershed. Do you know if there was a change in the water after the wildfire?
So we actually did quite a bit of investigation into that. We ran different tests, not just of our own, but with, I think it was whether it was the U.S. Forest Service. There are, I don't remember exactly the agency's name, but there are monitoring locations throughout the watershed. And so we did collect those. We actually did analysis on them. I don't recall the specifics, but I know that nothing changed to where it created a big concern for us. But originally the concern was with all the buildings that burned down, all the houses, and what type of metals and stuff would wash off into the river. And I don't recall it being anything significant to where it actually got us worried about our water. But the concern was there originally. And you know, then the question was, well, now with all the ash and the nutrients, is that going to cause a cyanotoxin outbreak? And at this point, we're still not 100% sure what causes those. Last year we had high cyanotoxins in the reservoir and in the river, way higher than they even were in 2018. Fortunately, our ozone system worked and did its job and took care of them. But there was nothing that would have led to last year being a high year. It's low again this year. We're running tests and it's very low. So it's.
You anticipated my next question, which was about cyanotoxin. So I remember hearing this on our tour. So the year that we remember the cyanotoxin outbreak, you're saying that we've had subsequent cyanotoxin outbreaks in our water supply?
Yes.
And have they been about the same or have they been worse?
Last year, I believe they were about 3 times higher than they were in 2018. So 2018 was the year. 2019, there were still algotoxins at levels that could have affected people, but we were using the powder activated carbon in our filters and we got through it. I think 2020, very minimal. We got our ozone facility built. You know, we had a year or two of really nothing showing up, and then last year we had a spike. And you know, I think the cyanotoxin year we were looking at, you know, 5 to 6 parts per billion, and last year it was almost 20, so significantly higher.
You know, through my questions, I'm trying to build a case for why we need to have a resilient water system. Mr. Danny, your chart at the beginning of your presentation demonstrates how if it wasn't for this water system, this community just wouldn't exist. And so to build the resilience that we need, you have my unequivocal support to move forward on what you need in order to build these wells and the stronger connection to the Kaiser intertie. I feel so strongly about this that that I really feel like I'm glad the plan is coming before the City Council today and that you've got a plan to take action on it tomorrow. I guess my last question, and maybe it has something to do with Councilor Gwynn's question as well, but for the drawdown, even though there's all these other resilience things we need a resilient water supply for, but it feels like but for the drawdown, we wouldn't be in this position. So I'm curious as to whether it's through the supplemental environmental impact statement, through a mitigation fund. We're just little old Salem, and they're the big old Army Corps of Engineers. And so I'm kind of wondering if there's been conversations about whether or not they should be the ones paying for the improvements to our water system rather than us playing defense against the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
We have discussed that with them. They have shared with us that they really are not the funding agency of the U.S. government, and we should look for other avenues. Our federal delegation and some of the early discussions we've had has mentioned that they're looking for ways to seek out funding to help agencies like ourselves try and get through this. At this point, I'm not confident that we're going to find a way to get that additional funding, but we certainly will try and get it every penny that we can. But it's not a clear process, at least not yet.
Last question, Madam Mayor. Do you know how much damage was done to the, I believe it was Sweet Home Lebanon, Albany, when they did the drawdown on the Green Peter? Do you know how much damage was done to their water systems?
Yeah, it's roughly
by a dollar amount.
Yeah, it was roughly $35 million. They filed suits with the Corps of Engineers, Sweet Home and Lebanon, and it was in the $35 million range. That's not the exact number, but I think somewhere between 30 and
$35 million in damages to their water systems by the drawdown.
That's correct.
Thank
and
you.
They use a different system than we do.
Okay, thank you.
Director Martin, may I ask, for the purpose of general education, where does the money for this project come from?
Yes, this would be utility rates. So we're going to be using the utility fund to fund these improvements.
And does that require any kind of increase?
We will have to look at that during the next rate proposal, but it could very well lead to that.
Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm going to follow you on that. So with that increase, what do we or the staff need to do just to get that word out to our constituents?
I think it's too early yet. The money is currently in the CIP, so it got planned. But what happens with the CIP is you prioritize the projects, and this became a higher priority. So it wasn't on our radar to do immediately. The fact we have a second intertie with the city of Kaiser and it still doesn't have a pump station, it just didn't ever raise to the level of, yeah, we got to get that done and get that in there with some of the other issues, like you mentioned, the sewer break. There's a lot of infrastructure needs. This forced our hand to try and make these improvements. So we're making it work within the current CIP, but what that means is other projects are not getting done. So if we want to get those other projects done too, it would likely lead to some type of rate increase.
And that's the part I want to highlight, because if Councilor Tigan just said, getting to the place where we are, even more resilient and we have a backup plan, but that last statement that you just said, I think that's the place where I have a lot of hesitancy and just, we don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. And I think, obviously having a conversation about this now and when when your team comes back, I think that's great. I'm good. Thank you.
I would just add, Councilor Brown, any increases would get before this body again. So it would happen through the CIP process. It would happen through the rate proposal process. So there's not going to be anything like we're just going to do. It'll go before this committee and through the Water Wastewater Task Force, and we'll make decisions and we'll do it all together as a
right.
group.
And it's something you said during our tour. It's about the water. right? I mean, I'll start with my own self, thinking about, what I take for granted, right? Because this raises the level, because the moment we don't have it, we're like, okay, what are the engineers not doing? Well, it's we. So again, I follow Councilor Teigen and Madam Mayor. We have utmost trust in your team, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you. Director Martin, we attended a water presentation, and they were talking about the drawdown. And at that time, you recognized that the drawdown was not going to be as severe as we originally thought, which was really good news. That decreased the length of time and the amount of sediment that might come through. So I'd like to have you talk about that so all of us know that things are better than we feared a few months before.
Yeah, so through that public involvement process that the Corps of Engineers had, they had several town hall meetings and they presented information. One of the exhibits was in Mr. Dannon's presentation, where it showed this is the amount of sediment exposed from Green Peter with their deep drawdown versus what is proposed at Detroit Reservoir. And I believe the numbers were around 0.8 square miles of additional exposed sediment in Detroit Reservoir, whereas Green Peter was, I think, over 4 square miles. So it looks like that footprint is less, which gives us a little bit of hope. The Corps also said they would work with us on perhaps staging the drawdown. So maybe the first year they wouldn't go to the full depth, maybe they would go partial, and then the next year they'd go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper till they got to that point, which sounded reasonable, and maybe that's a good path to try and minimize it. But what we found with these test runs is even those low levels of turbidity just really wipe these filters out. And so, I had hoped, if it's 50 NTU, maybe we can get by and we can make it work. And even if we get a couple weeks of runtime and we don't have to scrape an inch of sand off the filter and we can go back through in business, yeah, it'll cost more and the filter runtimes will be less. But when we found out of the deep penetration of the sediments in the filter, and we can only get a few runs out of it, and we may lose it, in a very short period of time, at millions of dollars. And not to mention, it takes time to rebuild those sand filters, months, probably 3 to 6 months to get them operational again. And we really don't want to be doing that in February when we have our peak water demand starting in May, June, and July. There's just not the time to really get those facilities back up. So it's concerning.
I'm sorry, just to finish up, I want to thank you all for the work you've done and preparation for us. And I think that the plans that you have will make us much more resilient with whatever the future brings. So I think that, as Councilor Teigen said, I'm all for this, and I see it as something that we will need to do. Thank you.
Councilor Vang.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Martin, we've been talking about this drawdown for a while, and the preparation for it. How long does this the city and the Army Corps expect the drawdown to last before we kind of go back to normal?
It's a difficult question to answer. When the lawsuits were first brought up on ESA, I believe over 15 years ago, there was a proposal for the Corps to build a device to capture the small juvenile fish so they could transport them downstream. They never got funding allocations to do that. And now with the latest biological opinion, the pressure has been put on. It was to start the drawdown this year. And I believe it originally said for 3 years. And I don't know if that's to do a further evaluation or to try and hope maybe they get funding for I call it the permanent solution, which wouldn't affect us. But through the rumblings we've heard, once they start doing this, there's a concern that it's a cheap alternative and it may work better for the fish and they may want to stick with something like this. We just don't know. it's really hard, it's hard to ascertain at this point. We're hopeful that the supplemental EIS, which is basically going to focus just on the deep drawdown and it's, you know, how it impacts communities as well as what it does for the fish, will give it the focus it needs. Because right now it was based on a biological opinion that was really focused on fish only and not the rest of us that need the river water. So I would expect, I would hope more clarity in the upcoming years. But to answer your question, then that drawdown is a short period of time, so it's, you know, roughly 30 days, and then it takes time for the river to clean back up again before it gets down to the lower turbidity levels that we can actually use with our treatment plant.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Varney?
I'm being called on.
You certainly don't have to speak, but I saw
Oh,
that
no,
look
no,
in
no,
your
no,
eye.
I'm giving you a bad time. I've been really quiet.
Listening a lot. You know, water is such a limiting factor. And as we all know, our yards are drying up and there's less water, less rainfall. And I really appreciate that we need a resilient water system. And I remember when I saw the well that's up by Guerin Island, I was really impressed at the time with with us being proactive and thinking about times of turbidity and lower water when we might have to use another source. And so I'm really supportive of this because we are being proactive, like we were with when we had the cyanobacteria incidents, and then the installation of the ozone treatment plant, which basically has saved us from going through what we had to go through in 2018. And so it's really crucial that we are proactive and looking ahead. And it's not just the drawdown, it's the fact that we are going to need to look at alternative sources of water, or at least supplements, in the future regardless. And so thank you for bringing the information and providing it. I'm really supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, absolutely. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Dan Atchison, City Attorney. I wanted to note that there's a typo in the resolution under Section 7. It states that the emergency should terminate May 1, 2026. We meant to correct that to December 31st, 2026, because the drawdown is going to happen in the fall of 26, so we need the emergency to extend through that portion. I have an amended motion for Councilor Nishioka once we're ready to do that.
Thank you. I would just like to add that there are 3 things we do here that are most important to the city of Salem: public safety, water, and sewer. We need to guarantee that the folks who live here can have those things. And so the work that you're doing is very important, and I appreciate it. And it comes from a place of genuine concern for providing for our community. So I thank you for that work. Anything further? Councilor Varney, go ahead.
Thank you. Before we get into the resolution, et cetera, I wanted to declare a potential conflict of interest. And that's just because of my work with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and the fact that I do work with propagation and hatchery programs in the Willamette. However, I do not work at all with any of the data, the fish provided to the Corps, anything having to do with fish passage, which this is associated with. So I just wanted to say that. I intend to vote because I'm not involved in it at all, but I wanted to say something.
Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else? Any further discussion? All right, will the recorder, we have an amendment. We need to read the original motion first, though, please.
Do I need to read it again, or do I just need to read this amended motion?
This would be a motion to amend.
Okay. So I move, this is the motion to amend, I move to adopt resolution number 2025-18 declaring an emergency related to the Detroit Reservoir deep drawdown with the change to extend the state of the emergency to December 31st, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Counselor Tigan?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Aye.
Counselor Vang?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike is absent. Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes.
So now we need to go back to the main motion as amended, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like me to read it again? Okay, then.
Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Tigan?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Aye.
Counselor Vang?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike is absent. Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, we are moving on to information reports. I'll read through the headings. If you have any anything you'd like to add or say or ask about that, please raise your hand. Item 6A, the Planning Commission decision, a consolidated minor comprehensive plan map amendment and neighborhood plan map amendment from industrial to industrial commercial and zone change from IBC, Industrial Business Campus, to IC, Industrial Commercial, approved. Item 6B, a summary of recent progress on the real estate portfolio list for the city-owned and leased real property. I see Councillor Matthews has his hand up.
I just wanted to ask, so part of the real estate portfolio proposal was that we would see what we're doing with our current properties. So not just kind of their classification, but are we leasing them currently? What are we leasing them for? What are the terms? But I didn't see that in the actual report. And so I want to know, is that part of what's coming, or where are we at on that portion of it, to know that we're using all of our properties at their highest and best value?
Brian Martinican, Public Works Director. That information will be coming. So we know that you were looking for information. We wanted to provide an update. We're just getting going on this. I know I've seen some of that data. I just don't know that we had it all ready to share quite yet, but we wanted to at least get you something to show the progress that was being made. But yes, we absolutely will be getting all that information for council.
Do you have a projection on timeline for that sort of thing?
One to 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on item 6B? Mr. City Attorney, can you clarify there was a corrected attachment?
Yes, thank you. So there was a correction that went out earlier with additions. The incorrect attachment went out with that. That's been corrected online. So on the online version of the agenda has the correct attachment, and that's also been emailed out. So we can get physical copies to you at your convenience.
Thank you for the explanation. If nothing further on that, we are moving on to item 6C, the cessation of Avelo Airline flights at Salem-Willamette Valley Airport. And that concludes the information reports. And something, would you like to add something, Councillor Vang?
Yeah, sure, with the opportunity. I know that we have a work session in August about Avelo and commercial airline for the airport. Is it just a work session on just commercial airline, or are we looking at other types of airport activities?
Me again. So on the 18th, the focus is going to be commercial air service. I think you heard from some of the folks in the audience tonight what that future may be, and some decisions. We'll present all the data for you so that you can make decisions on it. But we also haven't been back to this group since we had a work session earlier this year, and there's quite a bit of controversy came up with closing a second runway and, you know, federal funding and some of those things. We've actually made a lot of progress with that, and so we thought we would use this as a way to update multiple items at that meeting, but the focus would generally be on commercial air service.
Yes, Guest Councilor Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. These are just some things that I would hope would be covered in the work session. One would be the net financial impact of the Avelo experience on the city's operating funds, particularly the general fund and the airport fund, which I assume is an operating fund as well. Secondly, how much money will Avelo's departure free up for the general fund and the airport fund in this budget cycle? And then third, how much money, if any, will the city have to return to the federal or state governments because it no longer has passenger airline service?
I could answer a couple of those right now if you'd like.
Sure.
So we do not have to return any money to the federal government. The MRG, the Minimum Revenue Guarantee Agreement, was federally and locally funded, locally being businesses in our community that put up the grant match. And so they will be using that MRG to reimburse Avelo until Avelo stops flying. So the city will be returning nothing to the federal government. The other question you had was
the net financial impact of Avelo start to finish on the city's operating funds, particularly the general fund and the airport fund.
Right, so we will definitely go into depth on that. And then what we included in the staff report was how much revenue we expected from Avelo this coming fiscal year. We've talked about, you know, we had our airport manager has turned in his resignation, and our field operations manager has turned in his resignation. There will be salary savings that will help offset that Avelo loss of revenue. You know, it's not quite there in 6 months, but over 10 months it would offset it. So we are not going to be losing money because of it, I guess, because of some of the salary savings that are going to offset what the Avelo revenues are going to be. But so from that perspective, we don't see that being a general fund issue. However, there is the general fund expenses that go into operating commercial air service, and so we're going to look at all of that at that work session.
Thank you.
Councilor Matthews, I see your hand.
I just wanted to confirm, I know that a couple different citizens were here tonight that have kind of on behalf of Fly Salem, and they were talking about the timeline being somewhat tight if there was an opportunity for an MRG or something else for a secondary airline, or I guess now a primary airline. But does our work session with the 18th and kind of our future, are we meeting that kind of timeline, that short timeline that they're needing?
I think I heard one of the announcers say it'd be nice to get a decision within a month, is what I thought I heard him say. I don't think waiting till the 18th is going to change things. I think if you can come up, if a decision is made to fund an MRG or get an MRG in place, even if it's after the 18th, I don't think that's going to threaten, you know, the loss of service. I can't guarantee that, but it's a pretty quick turnaround to make a decision and have to make it like right away. So it's, gotcha. I think it's reasonable.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Director, so just a couple of questions. So back to the work session. When we do that work session, will we have, on the agenda, will we be able to discuss also the runways too? Is that a part of that work session?
We thought we would give you an update on the runway discussion, yes.
Okay, and right behind that, I know we've talked about, you know, some cost-saving measures or how to bring in more revenue with the airport. Would that be a part of that discussion too?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And the last one is, with the resignation of those two individuals, does that work now following you and your team?
it'll fall on all of us in our department, and specifically the folks that are still remaining at the airport.
Okay, so I just want to bring that to the attention of everyone that's here, that although there are some cost-saving measures because those individuals have resigned, the work still must be done. And so I'm going to say something we've all said before. Our staff is doing more with less. And so just, I know Madam City Manager, she's thinking this right now. Thank you to you and your team.
Councillor Varney.
Thank you very much. A couple of quick questions. Since there's such a short timeline and thinking about the work session, is this issue going to be brought up with the Finance Committee within the next month? I don't know when they're meeting again. Sorry.
Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. The next Finance Committee meeting is also on August 18th, the same day. So I think we'll just defer to the work session.
Okay, thank you. I had one more thing. It's okay. Thinking about the finances associated with just operation of commercial air, my question is, and this will probably just come up at the work session, is Avelo is the only commercial airline operating out of Salem, but we were one of 10 Western airports where Avelo ended service. Of the other 9, how many of them were relying only on Avelo for commercial air? Any of them? No, you can come back at the work session. It's okay. That's just something I wanted to ask, because there's the whole commercial operation idea versus us just being single. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Tigan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I think even just to raise some sort of threshold questions in preparation for the work session is a good idea. I'm, for both my benefit and I think the folks like keeping score at home, I'm curious for a couple questions about the MRG in particular. So the MRG that was in place or is in place currently for Avelo, just confirm, no, though the city, confirm my understanding, the city manages that MRG fund, but no city funds are part of it. It's both federally funded and from this sort of business community. Is that correct? Sorry, Mr. Martin, I'm going to make you get up again. And
Yes, that's correct. Now, we do have to make timely payments, and the federal government doesn't reimburse us as timely as we have to make the payments, but ultimately, any funds that we have to pay for that MRG gets reimbursed from the federal government, meaning.
But what we heard tonight from Travel Salem and from Fly Salem is that this $1 to $3 million commitment, we don't know the source of those dollars, and the last time we came up with it, it wasn't from City of Salem funds, it was from a different bucket of funds.
Correct.
Now, when they access the MRG, of which they've accessed not all of it, but a lot of it, what do they have to show to get it? That they didn't fill a flight?
They show the number of passengers on each flight. They show how much they collected in ticket revenue. They show how much they collected in other revenue for luggage, etc. And they come up with a total of how much they collected per flight. The MRG actually sets what the amount is, the minimum revenue guarantee per location. So, for example, Burbank, when the numbers get calculated on what the minimum revenue guarantee is, it's a set number that's actually in the agreement itself. And so then they compare what revenue they actually got to what the MRG says. And if they break even or make more money, nothing gets reimbursed. If they make less money, then the revenue guarantee grant reimburses them for the difference.
So I guess the thing I'm trying to, like the circle I'm trying to square, is that we heard from folks, and this is this is not a gotcha question, this is me not getting it. So we heard from folks like, all the flights are full, It's like people are really using the service, and yet we still paid $700-some thousand in an MRG. Is it because they could fill a flight and still not meet their minimum revenue? Like, I'm trying to genuinely understand it.
That's an excellent question, and as we've gone through the numbers, we've asked ourselves that sometimes. And what it comes down to is they're trying to charge people for tickets. They can adjust how much they charge for that ticket. And so I don't remember the numbers out of the top of my head, but May was a really good month from passenger loading number, but the revenue guarantee was, I think, $95,000 short. On the contrary, June was a pretty much equivalent month, but the MRG was like $2,500. And so you couldn't base it just on passenger numbers alone.
Okay.
There's other elements that go into the equation.
Okay, that's a really helpful answer. Thank you.
Guest Councilor Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just for the council. Again, I hope that the council will look carefully at the structure of any future minimum rate guarantee, given what we've heard tonight, with full flights and still needing supplemental revenue. And something isn't squaring up there. So I think that would be a really good thing to examine.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, nothing further then. We are moving on from information reports. We have no ordinances. We have no first reading, no second reading. We're on to public comment. I'll call 2 names at a time. Come forward to the podium, please. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute left, the light will flash yellow. When your time is up, it'll turn red. John Lyons and Val Dorsey.
There we go. Mayor, Council, neighborhood concern. The Myers Farm, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, is completely surrounded by trees and houses. And you want to conserve water, let's not have a fire. That field has not been maintained at all. So the concern with the neighborhood is the fire inspector came to our neighborhood association and said, it's not the flames, folks, it's the embers. Prepare with your hoses and everything else around your property. Somebody needs to get those people off their fannies and get that field mowed before we have a problem and the fire department has to use water. Gee, water, okay. We don't want to have that problem. We'd like to keep the neighborhood intact. Thank you.
Val Dorsey and Stephen Price.
Hello, my name is Valentino Dorsey, future member of the Dome Building Community Coalition. I'm here to talk about the Dome Building and our plan to revitalize it. I'll be standing in for presumptive president, Lacey Ramirez, a longtime Salem resident who developed food poisoning today and is too ill to attend. We've come tonight to discuss an issue of importance to Salem and Oregon in general. So I will now introduce you to Stephen Price, the executive director of the Dome Building Community Collection, to provide details.
Madam Mayor, Council President, and councilors, I'm here to talk about the Dome Building, the famous Salem historic landmark, and a plan to revitalize it. The Dome Building Community Coalition is forming a 501c3 to revitalize the Dome Building, building a diverse community partnership for the preservation of this historic building. It will serve as a youth and community hub, and ultimately act as a hub for various nonprofit organizations, as well as a youth-centered thrift store, food pantry, and drop-in center, among other things. We are very pleased to introduce Dr. Marianne Walker, who will be talking about one of the many entities that are supporting the Dome Building Community Coalition. Dr. Walker.
Greetings, my name is Dr. Marianne Walker, President of Young Leaders Program, a 501c3 currently based in Ward 7 here in Salem. We are a nonprofit serving youth from around the state. Madam Mayor, Council President, and councilors, I'm here to talk about the Dome Building and a plan to revitalize it. In addition to working with Young Leaders Program for the last 6 years, more than 10 years ago, I helped the early stage development of Hosea Youth Services in Eugene, serving unhoused youth with food, job training, and shelter, similar services to what we are proposing for the Dome Building. I also work with A Home for Every Child, a program placing unhoused transitionary youth in host homes. I also teach leadership and art classes to youth around the valley. For my day job, I work with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, developing online low-cost college for students around the world. Most importantly, my own father was a homeless youth with only a 9th grade education at one point, running away from an abusive foster home, who ended up earning a master's degree when given a role model and an opportunity. Thus, I care deeply about giving first-generation youth and young adults opportunities to become leaders, changing their communities and impacting future generations. The Salem-based nonprofit organization, Young Leaders Program, helps youth learn civics, finance, police process, adulting, and the political procedure through both a summer residency program and various workshops serving hundreds of students throughout the state. We've been operating since 2016, partnering with dozens of organizations, including those serving particularly Latino and other minority students, unhoused youth, and projects like running the recent Salem City flag redesign. We are hopeful that if we are allowed to partner with the Dome Building Coalition, we can find a permanent home, allowing us to serve a broader youth population more times throughout the year. To revitalize the Dome Building, we have dozens of volunteers ready to donate thousands of hours of service. We have a history of successful grant writing. We believe in the importance of historic preservation, that modern use should not compromise the rich history of the property. We are seeking to create a space that would benefit not just the initiatives aligned with our purposes, but also a space for other nonprofits to thrive and to operate from, to make a difference for both the city of Salem, as well as providing a space for youth from around the county and state to learn more about their state political process. Because of not having a large enough centrally located office, our program has had to search for various locations further away from the very capital, which we are trying to teach our youth about. It would be great to be located in the heart of Salem. I'd like to introduce Cara Kinsey and some of our amazing youth who would be blessed by having a long-term program headquarters to practice leadership skills.
Hi. Madam Mayor, Council President, and councilors, my name's Cara Kinsey, and I'm super excited to be here tonight because I'm really passionate about this topic. I am a teen services librarian with a background in education, and I've been lucky enough to work with the Young Leaders Program for several years, including supporting them in reaching diverse teens across the state. I've hosted their workshops and visited their summer camps in several locations, and have been amazed by their broad reach to so many communities. It's also amazing just how much fun they have and how interesting and exciting their simulations are, and how much I've learned along with the teen participants. The Dome Building in Salem would allow for a community to form, to build and expand on the good work I've seen in action. Having a home base means expanding to serve more local youth, while also providing increased opportunities to do outreach across the state and bring students here. I work with teens all day, and I know how hard it can be to reach them. But when I describe the types of things this group does, I see parents and teens alike just have light go off in their eyes like, oh, well, that's interesting. That sounds like something I could do. Every year I see this group reach teens who might otherwise fall through the cracks. immigrants, diverse socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds, neurodivergent students, students of all sexual and gender identities, all are welcome. All are served. They pivot, this group can pivot to deal with the unexpected. And we know that when dealing with teens, you expect the unexpected. So, this group that is coming together for this DOME Coalition encourages and supports personal growth while seeing leadership potential in everyone and providing a safe space for voices to be heard. So, let's tonight be a safe space for voices to be heard so that I can pass you on to Anna Mae Walker, one of the students who can speak directly to the impact of young leaders personally and what the DOME building could accomplish.
My name is Anna Mae Walker. I'm a student at Springfield High School. Madam Mayor, Council President, and Councilors, I'm here to talk about the DOME building and a plan for revitalizing it. I have firsthand seen the impact that a focused youth program can have on education and development. As a freshman in high school, I had no experience with film, photography, and I had minimal experience with leadership. Now, going into my senior year of high school, I have not only grown my skills as a videographer and an editor through youth-focused programs, but I have also had the opportunity to be editor-in-chief over an entire media department with a youth leadership program. Without opportunities like this to be put in a leadership position, I would not have the knowledge, skills, and confidence that I have today, nor would I have the desire for change and improvement within my community that these programs have fostered within me. With access to this building, it would allow such a larger scope for opportunities for youth such as myself to apply themselves in the world and grow their impact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, I believe, is Xavier. Is it Hoon? Hoon. Thank you.
1 second, I gotta pull up my notes. My name is Xavier Huynh from Springfield High School. I'm a student there, and I'm an incoming senior. This program has helped me realize the passion that I have is finance, and I've chosen to do accounting as a future career. My first year at the program, I was a treasurer, and this would help me later help me handle money in the student store for the next 2 years at my school. And because of that, I would like to help this coalition by being a treasurer on the board in the future, hopefully, when I become of age. And I'd like to introduce Luis Arano.
Madam Mayor, Council President, and Councilors, my name is Luis Arano, future Dome Building Community Coalition Board Member and a student at North Marion High School. Today, I'm here to talk about the Dome Building and a place to revitalize it. First, I would like to say that this organization changed my life in a very positive way and taught me a lot of stuff. Before getting involved in these programs, I didn't really know what law enforcement was or what it did beyond what I saw on TV shows or in the internet. This program changed that. I got to meet real officers, learn how the justice system works, how to defend myself in real-life situations, and even play the role of a patrol officer and clerk. It gave me a whole new perspective. As a Latino student, it meant a lot to be respected and taken seriously. The adult leaders really supported us, and I felt like my voice mattered. I learned how laws are enforced, but I also learned about leadership, teamwork, and communication. Now I'm thinking about a career in public service or criminal justice and participating as a staff in the program every summer. And the reason why I think YLP is a great option to revitalize the Dome Building is because YLP helped me see that people like me can be leaders and make a difference in our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Brian McKinley?
Mayor Hoy, Council President, Councilors, I'm going to tell you a quick story about a building which is older than all of us, which we all have seen, but very few have ever actually been in. A building designed by people and built by people who were born before the state of Oregon even existed. It was a territory. Some of them were born before that. Built by bricks made by convicts just down the street, much like the former state capitol which burned. This building, the Dome Building, was the entrance to the mental health system for our state for 70 years. Now, we call it a mental health system, but back then there was probably another word they used for it. It was never a place of happiness in those times. Many of the people who went in there are still there across the street in the memorial. For 40 years, for 35, 40 years, it was used by the Department of Corrections. In that noble use, the director of the Department of Corrections was actually murdered on the very steps. This is a building that has seen the history of Salem. It has become part of the history of America through Ken Kesey's book and the film that was filmed there. What we want to do is to bring this building back from this history of sadness to a bright, shining future here in Salem for the entire valley and all of Oregon, in fact. We want to inhabit it with people who can bring life to the building, preserve its historic integrity, and to also lend a service to the city of Salem and to the citizens therein. We've looked for places to house our program, and we've talked to other groups. And our goal is to partner with other groups in Salem, United Way and others like that, so that we can all make this building something that we can be proud of, something we can show to the state that this is where Salem's nexus for community service lies. And so I ask all of you counselors, and I ask you, Mayor Hoy and everyone here, to please support this project as we go forward with talking with DAS, as they have asked us to create an equitable coalition. I believe we are that coalition that they have asked for. And I want to thank you for taking this time and for hanging out through this meeting. And as a representative of the Dome Building Coalition, I want to thank you very much for your time.
Mr. McKinley, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to your group for being so well organized and doing my job, which is to introduce everyone. I really did appreciate it, and it was very efficient with time, so thank you. I'm just curious, where is your organization located currently?
Ward 7 in my garage.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the efforts of the youth that showed up with you tonight. Really, you guys, great job, especially for hanging out this long on such exciting topics.
And
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much. Have a great night. Last up, we have Manny Martinez.
Good evening. My name is Manny Martinez, and I live in Ward 2. I'm here to testify about public safety and homelessness. I'm a recovering alcoholic with over 6 years of sobriety. I understand addiction and mental health on a very deep and personal level. And obviously, addiction and mental health play a big part in this issue. I'm happy to see some productive ideas being discussed, like the restoration of the bicycle patrol and additional mental health professionals to assist our police. That said, I'd like to comment on the long-term goal that I believe most Salem citizens share. In the hundreds of conversations I've had with people regarding this issue, there's mostly consensus. And this goes for people all over the political spectrum, left and right. Nearly everyone agrees that we need more mental health and addiction services. We need more shelters and transitional housing. There's debate about funding, but most understand that it's a worthy and necessary investment. But most also understand that strict enforcement will be necessary as well. Countries like the Netherlands are often cited as good models to replicate. However, it's important to note that the programs that have been successful in countries like the Netherlands have only been successful because of strict enforcement. All the necessary services are provided, but the individual is required to participate. And when the individual refuses to participate, they're punished. The large majority agree we need both, services plus accountability, compassion plus enforcement. But there's a toxic element of the conversation that comes mainly from the activists. The activists deny the reality that the homeless community are committing a significant amount of crime that has become increasingly damaging to the business community. These crimes include violence, destruction of property, intimidating and harassing behavior, shoplifting, burglary, public defecation, public urination, and more. I've witnessed the activists not only deny that these things are happening and thus gaslighting us and denying our lived experience, but in some cases mocking and ridiculing those of us that dare to voice our concerns. This has to stop. We won't be able to solve this problem if this is the nature of our discourse. I also find it troubling to see some members of this city council basically accuse the business community of othering the homeless community when we bring up our very real and valid concerns. In my opinion, accusing us the business community of othering the homeless community when we voice our concerns is nothing more than a bullying tactic meant to shame us into silence. I encourage those of you on the council that indulge in that tactic to please stop doing that. We need to listen to each other, and we need to do so respectfully if we are to be the kind of community that can find that beautiful balance of kindness and accountability that will be necessary to solve this problem long term. Thank you.
Manny, thank you for being here, and thank you for testifying. If anyone on this council has not heard Manny's personal story, I recommend you have a conversation with him. It's quite something, and he's got a lot of insights into the conditions of our society. So thank you so much, Manny, for being here. Also, if you have seen me wear a Birth of Happiness t-shirt, that's Manny's band, that's his album, so that's where that comes from. So, all right, thank you. Is anybody else signing up? Would you like 3 minutes to testify?
Well, yes. That younger gentleman than me got to speak twice, and there's a couple of important things.
Sir, you're welcome to come to the podium and speak, but it has to be on non-agenda items.
I have
And you'll
never
have 3
been
minutes.
to a council meeting before, so I apologize for my ignorance. There's a couple of premises that need to be understood from a federal analyst. I'm a forensic correlative historical analyst for the Fed. My reasoning to tell you this is if the premise is flawed, the solution will be flawed. And the government does this all the time. And I can give you precise documents concerning this. The reason I bring this up is Lynn County water system was effectively destroyed, not damaged by dirt and so on. But that's not the county, it's the people. What is always missed is that we are the people, not the Fed. And I am a retired Fed, and I have all kinds of clearances which are just a waste of time. But the fact is, you're being led the wrong way instinctively. Political conflict and military conflict are twins. The only difference is one shoots you, and the other one just takes your money. And so I am emphatic about the fact that these guys that did that staff report were beautiful. They are correct, but they have no idea about the other half of the argument, and none of you here have even thought about it. Whether the Fed has either one, the right, and they don't, or two, do you use coordination process that's mandated by Congress to stop these kinds of things? I need an answer from somebody, because I'll bring what you should do under the congressional mandate from FLIPMA, which is called coordination. And you can either, one, delay this process, which is wise, but second, there's no necessity for the deep drawdown in the first place, and they destroyed Lynn County. Now they're modifying what they're doing so they continue to do it to every other dam in the basin. And I am not willing to let that go on and let you guys spend my money on something that you don't actually understand. That these staff people told you accurately, there is no answer to the damage. And so I apologize for my frustration. But on the other hand, I've been in this business for 50 years. None of you have been on your council for 50 years. I had to sit in this junk and talk to the Fed, sit between the military officers and everything else. And I come here and I get 3 minutes. And it's disgusting. Because you will let an NGO, I'm done. I saw the zeros. But I'm trying to make a point that some of us know. And we need to be accepted for our knowledge. And we aren't. I'm 80 years old. Nobody cares. And so I came here tonight for the first time to the city council meeting because I watched them online. And frankly,
Thank you, Lieutenant.
it was a pleasure, and I'm sorry that I'm frustrated, but you guys are just spending our money without checking the other half of the agreement. And that's with the people.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate your testimony. And thank you for your service. Is there anything further tonight? Okay, then we are adjourned.